3 minutes after 10, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We are going to talk about comments from the new Equalities Minister regarding the normalisation of racism and sexism in the UK. Okay, so get your house in order. What's the one? Get your ducks in a row for that. So I'm going to take a slightly, perhaps, unexpected approach to that story, but I'm giving you a quick heads up now because I just want to read you a couple of messages that have come in while I've been here, because what's the word that I'm looking for? I thought the word I was looking for was obtuse. I was trying to describe my own personality. I mean, it might well be obtuse, but that's not describing what I want to describe. I've got an almost overwhelming urge to make an hour of radio today for people who don't care about Harry and Meghan moving house. For example, good morning, says Monica. I think it would be nice not to talk about Harry and Meghan coming back to the UK. Well done, James O'Brien. But I do want to talk about them coming back to the UK, but from the point of view of people who don't care about them coming back to the UK, or who don't care about any of this hoopla. Michelle's been in touch already. Please don't do another hour of Meghan and Harry. Evidently, it wasn't just me that found them boring, judging by how few callers you had yesterday. Flipping heck, Michelle. Everyone's a critic. I had loads of callers. I just didn't take them. Have you not heard this show before? I'm perfectly capable of filling all 3 hours without troubling the switchboard. But I am, at the moment, toying. It's Friday. The sun is in the sky. Oh my, oh my. I'm toying with, it's not as much as it has been in recent weeks, but I'm toying with the idea of trying to do a phone-in for people like Monica and Michelle and the countless other people who've been in touch to articulate a complete lack of interest in what we were talking about. But can you do that? Can you have a phone-in about how uninterested you are in the... I don't think that you can, but this is what I mean. What's the word to describe a personality? Is it obdurate? Is it a stubbornness? It's not a stubbornness, because I'm not trying to change your mind and argue that you should... Is it a stubbornness? Why are you looking at me like that? I'm not trying to change your mind. I don't want you to suddenly be interested in it. I just want to know what it's like. I want to know what it's like to be... When I get to the Daily Mail this morning, you're not going to believe how many pages of the Daily Mail are dedicated to what Private Eye will almost certainly call, in their next edition, Couple Moves House. Couple announces house move. Family changes home. It'll be couple moves house, won't it? And you genuinely won't believe how many pages of the Daily Mail are dedicated to that simple 3-word event, couple moves house. But anyway, bear with me, okay? I'll be checking my messages during the breaks, so let me know whether or not you can see your way into this story. Do you have a D word? If I say the D word, what do you think in the context of current affairs? I say the D word. I don't know how old you are, obviously, but but let's just talk about the word deportation, all right? And where it appears in your conscience, or consciousness, actually. And I remember talking to Nick Lowles, who founded Hope Not Hate, and he was talking about his mother, who was, I forget precisely where she was from, forgive me, I didn't know I was going to be mentioning him today, it just popped into my head. But his mother was from overseas, and when the National Front were on the march in the 1970s, Nick developed, a deep fear of his mother being deported. I mean, it's going to be partly to do with whether or not you catch a little bit of the news when you're a kid, while you're trying to find the programmes that you want to watch, or depending on where you live, leaflets might be put through your letterbox. But that language of deportation in the 1970s, when the country was measurably much more racist, was rare. You know, it would be associated with neo-Nazis and the far right. I don't mean the deportation of foreign criminals, which is, a tricky business if you actually stop to think about it, because it means that you're creating a society in which you get punished differently according to where you were born or some other immutable characteristic. And that's probably not an easy road to go down, but it's not hard to get your head around why somebody born overseas does something awful and perfectly decent people conclude, well, they shouldn't be here anymore. So that's a very different proposition. But being deported just for being too foreign used to be a preserve of the most toxic politics, the most toxic people, the most toxic politicians. They tried to sort of rephrase it or reframe it, didn't it, by calling it remigration. But sometimes in the spirit of the boiled frog, you don't notice how bad things have got until you do. And what you're noticing is a significant sea change. Nick's mum was from Mauritius. So, he is not what you would call observably mixed race, but he became terrified that his own mother would be deported because she was born in Mauritius. He heard the language of the far right. You can listen to him talking about it on an old episode of Full Disclosure. And even on a personal level, because he's obviously inherited half of his genes are from his mum's side of the family, if they went on holiday together, he'd sit in a tent rather than expose himself to sunlight because he was so frightened of his skin going sufficiently dark for himself to become a target of the people that were talking about deporting people like his mum. Actually, just pause for a minute and think about that. Because that feels, or that once felt, in fact, even perhaps 2-3 years ago when I sat down with the guy, that felt a little bit bonkers, sweetly bonkers. Come on. And now? How prevalent is the word deportation in public discourse in Britain today? I meet Rupert Lowe, a fellow who's struggling to understand weather at the moment, but he uses it more often than most of us use toilets. He is always, every time I see him popping up somewhere, he's talking about deporting millions of people who've done absolutely nothing wrong except being a bit too foreign. And he is making inroads, of course, both electorally and most powerfully on Elon Musk's platform, where he is obviously boosted and put in front of people on a nuclear scale. But that's a really mad moment for a country. And I'm a white bloke. I've got Irish heritage. Eventually, if the temperature continues to be turned up, then people like Rupert Lowe will probably be calling for second-generation Irish people to be, or first-generation actually, Irish people to be adopted, to be deported. I think I'm technically first-generation because I was adopted, but it was really abnormal not long ago, right? Or it was out of the ordinary not that long ago to hear people talking about deportation. It was the British National Party and the National Front. To be completely innocent, but guilty of being a bit foreign, or too foreign, or the wrong kind of foreign, then you would be forcibly removed to this country. And of course, these people don't care about where you go. It's just a sort of rhetorical flourish. So that's what you might call a big-ticket boiled frog moment that perhaps we haven't properly noticed because it's happened relatively slowly. I presume it begins with Farage banging on about deportation without, as is his wont, without being particularly specific or having any details. He just lights blue touch paper and runs away. And then you've got supposedly intellectual people who started talking about the great replacement, this idea that there is a secret plan underway to replace white people with people of colour because people of colour are more likely to, I don't actually know what they're more likely to do, vote for something that I'm not going to vote for or that you're not going, I don't know. But that was poisonous, racist nonsense, which sadly was published in this country, I think mostly in the pages of the Spectator magazine. And that bleeds in, it seeps in to the temperature of public discourse. So we live in a country now where talking about deporting people just for being people who are here legally has become commonplace. We're going to deport people who've currently got every right to be here. We're going to take their right to be here away and we're going to deport them. And I have no way of knowing how frightening that would be for somebody like the 10-year-old Nick Lowles 40-odd years ago when the National Front were on the march. I mean, what on earth would that be like for a child today? If they were to stumble across the wrong or the right headline, if they were to find themselves witnessing a conversation, overhearing a conversation in the kitchen between family members about whether or not we're on this list, whether or not we're likely to be, if someone who is being treated with a relative degree, certainly being treated like a proper politician on Twitter, and sits in the House of Commons, he's talking about deporting millions of people, and you are of foreign extraction. How do you know he doesn't mean you? How do you process that if you're a child? So that's what I would call a sort of big ticket moment that you probably need to have some ethnic minority heritage to fully understand. And I obviously don't. But I'm interested today also in the small ticket moments. Racism and sexism have become normalised in Britain, the Equalities Minister has said, warning in particular that young men were being sucked into violent misogyny by a social media cesspit, that's Bridget Phillipson's word. I worry, she said in a podcast, that we are at a kind of ground zero in terms of attitudes around violence against women and girls. Things that not very long ago felt totally unacceptable are becoming normal. I think we're seeing that in terms of attitudes towards women, and I think we see that in terms of attitudes around racism. And she's just correct, isn't she? Because you can't argue with the fact that not that long ago, talking about deporting people who had every right to be here would have been absolutely beyond the pale. And now it's in the House of Commons, let alone the pages of some newspapers, and crucially, I suppose, the profoundly racist platform, or the very racist promoting platform that Elon Musk has managed to create in an extraordinarily short amount of time. So the thing about boiling frogs is that the frog isn't supposed to notice. Technically, apparently, it doesn't actually work like this, but it's a figure of speech for a reason. The boiled frog dies because the frog doesn't notice the heat increasing, because the heat is being increased so incrementally. You turn it up so slowly. You miss the moments, right? You miss the milestones. You go from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey without pausing or noting any of the stopping off points. I think the phrase I want you to focus on there is that you miss the moments of change, the moments of decline. One of the political comments I think about most often, and I won't get the words right, but it's the sense of what he said that matters most, was Tony Benn talking about victory being impossible. You never win anything if you are, I'm going to, for the purposes of this conversation, repulsed by racism. You never win anything. All you ever do is win temporary battles, and then the other side start pushing back. It's the sort of toing and froing of human history. There was a documentary on the television this week, we may talk about it later, that was attacking ADHD. It's been criticised by almost everybody qualified to comment on the subject, but it was deeply irresponsible, the great ADHD myth or something like that. And a chap who I follow on Blue Sky, Roland Smith, described it as weaponised nostalgia, this idea that something must be false because it wasn't around when I was a kid. And I said to him, do you think they'll go for dyslexia? Surely we can derive some optimism from the fact that dyslexia was once dismissed and poo-pooed and prompting great amounts of scepticism. And he said, nah, they'll go for that if they can, because it's weaponised nostalgia. Nothing is off limits with weaponised nostalgia, and so it is with social progress. They reversed Roe versus Wade in the United States of America. When I was studying that for my politics A-level in the late 1980s, that was one of those things that you thought as a kid, oh, wow, that's permanent. Abortion's legal now. Bodily autonomy for women is legal now. And now it's not. Not legal, permanent. And of course it wasn't. You can repeal that as well. It was a whole sector of my A-level politics, because it was such a seminal moment, Roe versus Wade, allowing a woman to have an abortion. It happened years later in Ireland, but of course it's not permanent. Nothing is permanent. There's a far-right nationalist on the march in Germany at the moment who is pro-Russia and is set perhaps to become the first far-right politician to run a state in Germany since, well, you don't need me to tell you who was in charge last time far-right politicians were governing entire states in Germany. Nothing is ever permanent. These things, what's the word that I want? Flow. They ebb and they flow. And that's why today I just want to notice some moments. And it's not confined. I hope this doesn't sound a bit tin-eared. It's not going to be confined to victims. A friend of mine messaged me the other day in quite a state, actually. I don't even know why they messaged me, but obviously this is what I do for a living. Because they've been sitting in a pub and there were some lads there. I don't think it matters where they come from, but they weren't from the part of London that the pub was in. And there was some lads there and they'd started a conversation. They were down here to work. They were construction workers, not from London, white guys, and they were getting on famously, and they were having a bit of a laugh. I think the guys were probably, or thought at least, they were chatting up my friend, and that's what has kept beer flowing in pubs for years. And one of them, only one of them, just started dropping the N-word into the conversation as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And she didn't know what to do. I mean, you say you can't do that, or you say, I'm really sorry, I'm deeply uncomfortable with that word, but the utter incomprehension about why a young white woman in a pub in London in 2026 would balk at, be repulsed by, horrified by the use of the N-word, would not have happened 10 years ago. You would not need to explain 10 years ago why you just don't use the N-word in polite conversation. If you use it at all, as Nigel Farage reportedly did for most of his life, according, among others, to the bloke that actually founded UKIP, then you do it behind closed doors. You don't do it in public with strangers. Well, you do now. You do now. So the reason I say that, and the reason why I say I hope I'm not being tin-eared, is that we might all have noticed you don't have to be on the receiving end, or you don't have to be the target for the normalisation of racism and or sexism to have noticed it. And in some ways, I think, and I reserve the right to be wrong, as always, but I think it's important for those of us who are not going to be the target of it to point out when we've noted it as well, the moments that are missed as the frog gets boiled. So, the Equalities Minister says that racism and sexism have been normalised in the UK. I want you to tell me the single thing that you have witnessed or experienced, equally valuable for me this morning, but obviously not equally traumatic or equally powerful for you, but the single thing you have witnessed or experienced that speaks to a significant change in how these two issues affect our country, and how normalised, to use Bridget Phillipson's words, racism and sexism has become. So it will be the thing that's happened to you relatively recently that either you couldn't quite believe or you thought had been consigned to the history books. 21 minutes after 10 is the time. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. So the moments that we miss, but you didn't miss them, you just didn't know what to do with them until now, because I'm giving you an opportunity to share them. Racism, sexism, normalised in the UK. And the best example I could come up with was the way that we now blithely listen to the word deportation being bandied around absolutely casually, when once it was a really, really heavy idea. Now it's just tossed about casually. And not the deportation of people who've done anything wrong, just the deportation of people who are too foreign or the wrong kind of foreign. What is the thing that you're thinking of now that proves Bridget Phillipson's point? Something that was abnormal 10 years ago is becoming increasingly normal now. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 24 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We should probably do this more often, but the moments that are public are treated differently from how they would have been a few years ago. I don't know if you remember Nick Timothy, the Conservative MP, complaining about Muslims praying in Trafalgar Square, calling it an act of domination. Honest Bob Jenrick complaining in October that he hadn't seen another white face on a trip to an area of Birmingham. These things are not normal. These things are objectively disgusting. You can't pray in public. Clear off. Go and pray in private. Go and hide away when you pray. And I don't like the colour of your face. You've got that other woman from Farage's outfit complaining about brown faces on television. She must have been livid when Farage got back from his holidays and popped up on the telly, looking not unlike David Dickinson, the much-loved Antiques TV presenter. But the point is not just about what happens in public, because what happens in public seeps down into private exchanges, or at least public exchanges that are not in the public sphere. It's just you noting a moment of normalisation, the thing you can't quite believe is happening now. The things that you thought were over 25 after 10 is the time. Danielle is in Birmingham. Danielle, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, I just think that we are becoming a lot more casual about racism in this country. I'm thinking specifically about the way that some of my family members refer to Pakistani members of the community. I'm in Birmingham. It's a very, very diverse community. It's one of the things that I love about it, actually. And when I
will
moved
be there
away
later
from the
today,
city-
Danielle. I will be there later today. But yes, I'm
fabulous,
fond of the
yes.
West Midlands too. Go on.
Wonderful. And it wasn't until I moved away from Birmingham that I realised how precious it was that I was exposed to, my classmates were Sikh and Muslim and Hindu and so on, and it just wasn't an issue at all. But I'm definitely noticing, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, family members in particular, feeling really comfortable describing Pakistani members of the community as if, like, I cringe
I don't know.
saying it
I'm going to
now.
have to. I've just had to lose a little bit of that. There's some. We wouldn't say the N word on the radio, and we wouldn't say the P word. It's my fault. I should have made that clearer before people came on. So we just had to dump that because you used the P word, and everyone can work out what you would have said. And normally we would just say the P word. And would they not have done that, say, 10 years ago?
I don't think so. So casually, and I've been horrified, sitting around dinner tables and cringed and said, we don't really say that.
And how did they respond? Because I mean, this is
don't be ridiculous. Very kind of
yeah,
very flippant, very casual. Like it doesn't.
What's your
really
ethnicity?
matter. So I'm mixed race.
And are we talking
Jamaican
about
and
both
Irish.
sides of your background, the Irish background and the Jamaican background? Who will do this?
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Because once it's out of the bag, you can't get it back in again, can you?
Well, indeed, very, very casual about it.
And what about you personally? Have you had a moment? I mean, that's a moment. That's a moment, but it's a broad moment because you say it happens a lot. And when you try and stop it from happening, I mean, there's 3 things here. It's happened. I don't think it used to happen. And when I point out that it's happening, it doesn't seem to matter to the people I'm pointing it out to. Have you had anything personal happen to you? Have you been on the end of the lang? Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I was explaining to your colleague that just catching a first-class train recently, so I'm quite fair-skinned, but obviously black. I have like a huge afro. And as I approached the desk for the first-class lounge, the lady at the desk looked me up and down as if, I don't know what really. And she said, are you aware that this is the first-class lounge?
Really?
And I said, yes, I am.
I mean, perhaps you just looked very young and cool.
I'm nearly 40. I'm heavily pregnant. I don't. While I'd love to take that as a compliment, I'm not sure that was. I don't know.
You know what? And this is an example of what it's like to be white. Just sort of and automatically reaching for a reason that wouldn't be low level, but quite explicit or implicit racism. I have never been asked, and I am a scruffy git, Danielle. Honestly, I sometimes look like I got dressed in a hedge, and I sit in first class on trains if someone else is paying for my ticket, and I have never once been asked. I've been asked for my ticket, but I've never had that kind of implicit suggestion that you're sitting in the wrong carriage, sir.
Indeed, and I was dressed very smartly because I was down in London for professional reasons. So to me, there was a disconnect there, and I wondered if it was because of the colour of my skin.
What else might it have been?
I genuinely don't know. Again, I was dressed in business wear. It wasn't a look of, oh, she looks very smart, or she's heavily pregnant, I'm concerned for her. It was, I very much got the sense that it felt very judgmental.
Yeah, no, and I think perhaps part of the problem is that my kind of well-meaning instincts automatically ask you what else it might have been when, if it was me on the receiving end of that kind of behaviour, I mean, it's judgment. You're being judged, and what on earth could you possibly be judged for except external characteristics that are not shared by other people sitting in the first class part of the carriage? It is 10:30. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. They're just the things. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a former advisor to Theresa May attacking people for praying in public and calling it what did he call it? An act of aggression or an act of domination even. Sheesh. It could just be that. Or it could be something much more hurtful than that, or much more explicit than that. The point is, you don't think it would have happened, shall we say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And that's mad, because for my entire life, I thought the direction of traffic here was forwards. But it's backwards now, isn't it? I don't think anyone can argue with that. Although this programme being this programme, you know what to do if you want to. Dominic Ellis is here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:33 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I've noticed something as well that the policy editor at The Guardian, Kieran Stacey, points out in their coverage of Bridget Phillipson's comments. I hadn't really picked up on this, but the Labour Party has not been tackling things like Nick Timothy condemning Muslims for saying prayers, or Honest Bob Jenrick complaining about people having the wrong coloured face in their own hometown, on their own streets, as they walk out of their own front doors. How dare you step out of your own front door while being brown? Honest Bob Jenrick might be driving past. Have you got no thoughts for the poor man's sensibilities? Labour have not been attacking this. It's one of Starmer's decisions that I found dangerous and deeply wrong, but, you know, it may have been that the electoral calculus proved his point. We will never know. But as Kieran Stacey in The Guardian puts it today, Labour has been accused in recent years of shying away from criticising statements by Reform and Conservative MPs for fear of alienating their own voters. These comments from Bridget Phillipson suggest that under Andy Burnham, ministers will be freer to take on their opponents more directly, even on sensitive issues such as race and gender equality. So if you are troubled by the small boats issue and you're currently unaware of the improvements in that area, or unmoved by the improvements in that area, let's ring fence that concern. I know for a lot of people, when Rishi Sunak appeared at a lectern with "Stop the Boats" on the front of it, it felt as if something quite significant had shifted, as if Farage had once again managed to make public discourse, political discourse, about relatively minor details rather than the massive issues that our country faces, like, you know, war, health, education, all of those things, homelessness, all of those things. It just ring fence the small boats, and I accept you are deeply concerned about small boats, and I accept that you don't really care that the Tories shut down all the safe and legal routes, and that when you describe these people as illegals who've broken into our country or invaded, you're kind of making a mockery of the long and proud human history of refugee statuses and asylum processes, beloved of people like, you know, that mad old lefty Winston Churchill. So that's fine. We can ring fence that. But if you're concerned about small boats and you're not really bothered about the detail or the facts, you can't. That doesn't mean you're automatically in favour of people being called the P word when they're going about their business. It doesn't mean you're automatically in favour of black women being automatically presumed to have no right to be in a first-class rail carriage. Do you see what I mean? That's what she means by normalisation. It might be a process of seepage, but you don't. There's no point getting in touch with me to say, "Oh, you ludicrous lefty, when will you accept there's too many people coming here in small boats?" Because they're talking about deporting people who came here in response to invitations to work. They're talking about deporting millions. That's the word that they're using, millions. And Rupert Lowe is in the House of Commons. You take that as the offline pinnacle, and then you go online and you can see hatred and racism on a scale that Joseph Goebbels would find absolutely delightful, absolutely he'd love it. I mean, could you imagine what Joseph Goebbels could have done with Twitter? Here's the thing, you don't have to. Just have a look at it. Have a look at Twitter. That's what Joseph Goebbels would have done with it. That's what has been done with it. So you've got the online and the offline now merging. It started with the flags, or at least it was a moment was the flags. How can I get all my racism off Twitter and into the streets? How can I start frightening people who I don't like because they're brown? So I stuck loads of flags on my avatar. Why don't I stick loads of flags on their street? That'll show them. That will show how concerned I am about illegal immigration, sticking up loads of flags on a street where there aren't any people who've come here via irregular routes. So it's obvious what's happening. Or at least it's obvious if you care to think about it. But what I want today are the moments, the moments that you notice. And there are a lot of them, so I should probably shut up and take a few more. Zach's in Smethwick, back to the West Midlands. Rolfe Street or Galton Bridge, Zach?
Near Galton Bridge, I think. Although I'm bang on in the middle, it's more Bearwood.
All right, you are. Go on. What's on your mind? Why did you pick up the phone?
So, the reason I picked up the phone was because this topic came up literally about a couple of months ago, just before the World Cup.
Yeah.
Me and my mates were sitting in Dudley having a few with my wife, who's mixed race,
right.
White, visibly South Asian. Now that most people don't know that she's mixed race at all.
Got it.
And we were sitting there in the pub. I didn't hear this personally up until the last incident of it happening. But we were sitting there. My mate started looking around because there was a guy behind us using the P slur casually in the pub.
The P slur for people who yes.
P slur,
so everyone knows what that is.
What people typically use for South Asians.
Yes.
And he'd heard it, and my wife had heard it, and I hadn't heard it because I'm normally quite leery when I'm drunk, so I was having a bit of a laugh. And then my friend turned around and he's gone, "Mate, don't use that word in this pub," which I thought, fair play to him, And then
your mate did that.
My mate did that,
right.
Yeah. And I didn't hear it, but then he started shouting to my mate, and he's my mate, so I go back him up.
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, don't use it." I didn't know at this point, and he was like, "I'll use it if I want to," and. It was like, and this was the key thing for me. He was like, "This is Dudley, mate. We'll say what we want."
Yeah.
And it was just, I was just like, well, I'm not from Smithwick. I'm originally from Crazy, Dudley area. And I was like, well, that's not what we grew up with. What kind of upbringing do you have, or what's changed your mind over these past couple of years that you think that's acceptable? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're unlikely to have a frank and meaningful conversation with him, but something has given him permission, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that happened afterwards, so after we had the argument with him, there was another guy in the pub who got up, and because he started shouting to the original guy, the other guy went, "Oh, well, you have been swearing at him." And it's like, well,
wow.
You're comparing a swear word to a slur. Do you know what I mean?
To a racist slur.
Yeah, to a racist slur at that, yeah.
What, you don't have to answer this, Zach. How does your wife process these kind of moments?
So my wife, she loves, Great Britain and everything, but recently she's been really, really, worried, especially with, the riots and stuff that have been going on. It's made, I think, and this was the sad thing to me that she said, she's like, I'm now seeing white people, and I don't know if they're thinking that about me. Do you know what I mean?
Are they one of them?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, mate. It's not right, is it?
No, it's not, but I don't know what to say to her half the time because you don't know.
No, because you can say, no, don't worry, they're not, and then she'll sit down in a pub and the bloke at the next table is.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the issue. And the pub, to be fair to them, they did deal with it the right way. They've banned him, and they've not had since before then and after then. There's never been any incident again. But my wife just doesn't go because we used to get to that pub quite regularly, and now she just doesn't go anymore
because she doesn't know who she's going to end up sitting next to. Can you put a date on it? I mean, because listen, we're white. You're probably closer. Yeah. Well, you're obviously closer to some of these issues than I am by dint of who you fell in love with, but. And we grew up in similar necks of the woods, and that wouldn't have happened 10, 15 years ago. The P word would have been, no one would have dared say it out loud. In some pubs they would have done, but it would have been, really rare.
Yeah. And the strange thing for me is that, I'm not old, I'm only 25, but when I grew up, this was in 2010s, early 2010s, I remember. People were teaching you not to do this sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It was really, really, really heavily emphasised in school and just in society in general. And now it doesn't seem to be at all. Or at least it feels like it's not. I don't know if it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it gets attacked because a couple of people have pointed out that the ticket inspector that we heard about in the first call could do with what we would call unconscious bias training. They probably don't realise that if they're saying to a black woman, "Oh, you do know this is first class, don't you?" And if they're saying to a white woman, "Can I see your ticket, please?" they have an unconscious bias. That's literally what it is. But you know what happens when unconscious bias training appears in the news? It gets attacked for being utterly unnecessary, woke, and proof that, I don't know, the lunatics are taking over the asylum. Zach, take care, mate. Seriously. And I'm sorry for what you went through, but obviously I'm much sorrier for what your wife is and continues to go through. Good Lord, it's all about the Midlands today. David's in Leamington Spa. David, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Good morning. Right, okay, we've spoken once before on Mystery Hour a while ago.
Things are getting serious now, David.
Yeah, this is a bit more difficult.
Go on, take all the time you need.
Okay, I'm 77.
It's all right.
Right.
Go on. You're among friends.
So I've got a black Jamaican wife.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to be focused, James.
Yeah.
We have a guy that used to come to the house and service the lawnmower. He had been to a promotion about some all dancing, all singing new mower.
Okay.
And the person at this promotion said, from the handle of this lawnmower, you can control everything. And he said, so he's describing what he did at this promotion. Yeah. So he said to me, I know this. He doesn't know that I've got a black wife.
Right.
Okay. And he said to me, I know this is not politically correct, but I stood up and said, oh, do you mean I can even control my N
right.
from the handle of this new lawnmower? And that.
What did you say?
He'd been.
I mean, this is actually, just a quick history lesson, not for you, David, but for some people listening, that this is kind of what Enoch Powell was talking about when he used the phrase whip hand. And the black man will have the whip hand over the white man has the whip hand over the black man. The idea that you use your hand to, either whip or control a person, it's the language of slavery. So he knew exactly what he was doing, this guy. But, of course, that doesn't stop you from struggling to believe your ears.
I don't think as quickly as I used. I was completely stunned, James, and I sort of carried on the conversation, sort of pretending that I had not heard that.
Okay.
But once I got back into the house, obviously I never contacted him again. I didn't want to see him out the front of our house ever again. But I had to, I had to sort of compose myself a bit before I described to my wife what had just happened.
And what did she say?
I can't recall just now.
No,
but,
fair enough. You told the story very powerfully, David. Don't worry about that. You've got it. And
compared to what other people endure, it's.
I think this is. I hadn't realised this. I knew I had a reason for saying at the beginning, it's not just the people who've experienced it, it's those of us who've witnessed it that matter, because a lot of this stuff he never would have said it if your wife had been there. So that's what normalisation is, isn't it? I kind of missed that point. A lot of it is, my friend in the pub would never have heard the N-word if she had been black or she had been sitting with a black friend. But when there's no people of colour around, it happens. And that would, you're older than me, so can you put a date on? Do you feel that there is a calendar-based factor to this conversation that 5 years ago you would not have expected? You'd have been shocked 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but something's happened more recently or not? Because these people have always been there, just there are more of them perhaps than there used to be, and they are more emboldened than ever before.
I have to say that since Brexit, I think, and the flags and so forth, that there's been a change in the atmosphere in this country. And actually, hearing Zach speak earlier on, I lived in Bearwood, which is just outside Smethwick, and back in the 70s, I was painting out NF. This is before I met my wife.
Right.
I was painting out NF signs at the end of the road that I lived in.
Gosh. It was a hotbed of that. There were parts of it in Birmingham. My old man was on the Daily Telegraph at the time, in the late 70s, and would cover the marches through parts of the Black Country as well, parts of the West Mid, that part of the West Midlands. David, thank you. You really got your story across very powerfully, and that idea of things being witnessed by those of us who are not victims of racism. Although I've got one little kind of, I suppose we'd call it Idiot's Corner. Let me get this for you. I cannot listen to you for more than 5 minutes. Please get a new job ASAP, as station good otherwise. You to Ireland, I would not wish them on you. I think you meant to put it the other way around, mate. I think you meant to say I would not wish you on them. Unless, of course, you're maligning all the Irish people and suggesting that they're so terrible that even though you hate me, you would feel sorry for me if I was actually forced to live in Ireland somehow. But I don't think that's what happened. I think you just got your words the wrong way around. You need remedial English lessons, I think, or perhaps you should join one of those classes teaching English as a foreign language.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:52 is the time. A nice message from Richard. Richard's been in touch to say the first thing gerbils would do is get rid of you. Thank you, Richard, who is, I can see from his history of sending messages to this radio station, a very big Rupert Lowe fan. You didn't mishear me. Let me just in case you weren't concentrating. Richard's been in touch to say the first thing gerbils would do is get rid of you. I don't know what I've ever done to offend little rodents, but on we go. Tony's in Hackney. Tony, what made you pick up the phone?
Hello, mate. So I want to echo what the previous caller said about Brexit that gave racists a platform of respectability. Before Brexit, it was kind of hidden.
And hopefully in retreat, although I don't get to say that. I can only say hopefully. I don't get to say whether or not it was or not. Well,
I grew up in the 70s and 80s like yourself, and you sort of noticed the curve of 70s and 80s. There's a lot of it. Then in the 90s, we all realised it's a really, really bad thing to be racist. And the whole Brexit thing has made people think it's actually okay, that there's a platform of respectability about it. And you're talking about moments. Just a couple of days ago, I was out with my wife. My wife is of Caribbean heritage, and we got stopped and searched as she got stopped and searched as we were walking out of a John Lewis store. Right. And we left, and you know, I mentioned racism, and she was really cross. We left. We actually went back and complained to John Lewis because we saw this security guard watch other people walk through the exit and the alarm going off, and he just waved them on. And when it happened to my wife, he had to pull her up and say, right, let's look through your bag. And I said, look, you just let other people go through. This is ridiculous.
So the alarm had gone off?
The alarm had gone off. It had gone off for other people as well.
No, I get it. So he's got a defence, hasn't he? Really, in a way. Yeah. But you've witnessed him treating people who weren't black differently, which there's a word for that.
Yeah, exactly that. And we complained, and the management were very good. She said, well, he's agency, and we won't be having him again, etc. But that's an example of this kind of.
But if he spends his life online, he's got. Not a defence in a billion years, but he's got no palate, really, to appreciate how he's behaving. He's got really no...
I'm glad you mentioned the online thing, James. I'm a teacher, and I teach in a special needs provision in Hackney, and I do a lot of work on the internet and the Andrew Tates of the world and how it's affecting our young people. And what we've got is this, again, this platform of respectability. People like Elon Musk flooding the internet with their sort of far-right narratives, and children who spend most of their time glued to a screen, they can't avoid it, and so it's being drummed into them, this kind of far-right narrative.
How does it manifest? What would you witness in a young boy or man?
So I mean, the misogyny is pretty bad. But
what do we mean by that? Because I know Andrew Tate has talked about how women are intrinsically lazy. There's no such thing as an independent female. The BBC saw a text he'd sent to a woman in which he said, "I love raping you." They bear responsibility for being sexually assaulted. So do they go that far? Do they follow him that far?
So, we've had a real issue recently with the word rape being bandied around a lot by the kids. And they don't seem to understand the gravity of what rape is, of how it affects people. Even hearing the word how it could affect people, it seems to be just like a joke word now, and. That's the misogyny side of things. We've also got a lot of kids that are exposed to like far right stuff, Nazism, etc., on the internet, and they take it all in. And we've got to admit that people like Elon Musk have got a huge platform, and they're infiltrating all our young people. With their far-right narrative.
And some of the stuff he's done, the Sundar Katwala, a British Future track, so I can keep an eye on it on Blue Sky without having to sully my sandals by dipping a toe into his platform. Some of the stuff he's doing now, like messages like first the traitors, then the invaders. I mean, it is, and essentially calling for violence on our streets in a way that would be illegal in almost any other context. But, you know,
exactly. If you look at, I mean, I know it's in America, but the riots in Capitol Hill, that's kind of normalised this kind of thing. You've got people like Trump that are defending them and setting aside money to defend them, and it used to be, James, when we grew up, it used to be bad to be a racist.
Yeah.
And if you were racist, you'd have to keep it hidden.
Yeah.
And now it's still seen as bad to be a racist, but now they've been given an air of respectability because racist people are in power and they're saying it's actually okay. So...
Yeah, they have positions of power. They're not currently in power, thankfully, but they're certainly.
Well, if you look at Elon Musk, that's
power. Yeah, I know. I just wanted to make it clear you don't mean the current government, but I don't think you mean the current government.
Well, no, I don't. But, you know, there are a lot of things that could be said about.
And Phillipson has come out today and said them, and I hadn't really clocked the fact that under Keir Starmer she probably wouldn't have done, or wouldn't have been encouraged to, or possibly wouldn't even have been allowed to. So unless you push back against this stuff, that notion of appeasement, which I did find myself thinking of when Keir Starmer, and I know Shabana Mahmood is still in the Home Office, but some of those policies looked as if they were sort of saying, well, if we just feed the lion of racism enough red meat, then perhaps it will stop roaring. And that's just a heartbreakingly naive position to adopt. It's that juxtaposition, once again, isn't it? Because between people who see footage of boats crossing the English Channel and feel frightened, and you can leave them in one category and say, that's fine, you need to have your concerns addressed, and then people who are going to use P words or N words or talk about deporting people who've got every right to be here. And we've allowed that line, I think liberals have allowed that line to become really blurred.
Right.
And we have to unblur it.
Indeed.
Good man.
The biggest thing for me is, you know, the internet and the kids and what they're exposed to, because there's no way we can police that 24/7. And the people with the most influence on the internet are the people with this far right agenda.
And what about violence? What about boys being violent to girls? Is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was growing up, like, boys didn't hit girls. You're not supposed to hit a girl. You're a boy. But it seems to me there's quite a lot of young men that seem to think if a girl hits you, you can hit her back, and it's perfectly fine to hit a female under certain conditions. Now, like I said, when I grew up, you just don't do that. You just don't hit a girl no matter what. But there's that kind of that narrative seems to have changed a little bit for our young people today. And
it's not hard to work out why. I'll tell you what we should do, Tony. We should get the Home Office to issue pamphlets for the young boys that you're talking about, for the young men that you're talking about, telling them about consent, telling them about rape, telling them about misogyny and violence, and telling them what is acceptable behaviour and what is not acceptable behaviour. But of course, if we did that, people might be cross, because it would be suggesting that every single teenager in the country is an Andrew Tate disciple or some sort of savage. Thank you, mate. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 4 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And I'm going to nudge the conversation along a little bit into slightly uncomfortable territory. And the reason why it's uncomfortable is because white people talking about racism is a tricky territory, isn't it? Literally. And we would never exclusively do that. But it was interesting what happened in the last hour, and it has made me wonder whether there is a conversation to be had about what people say now what people do now when there aren't any people of colour around. I don't think I'm going to get this, really, because if I'm in company with people who know me or know what I do or know who I am, then they are highly unlikely to I mean, I get the odd parent of a friend telling me how much they love Nigel, and then I ask them 3 questions and their position falls apart entirely. It sometimes feels like my friends are putting it happened most recently at a funeral. It feels like people are putting a penny in a slot and sending me into a social situation to dismantle their racist uncle. But I'm not, I don't have a story, is what I'm telling you. I don't think I have a story here about the things that people would never say if, and the callers we've had, if my black wife was present or if my Asian wife was present. Zach in Smethwick, of course, his Asian wife was present, but under his own description, the person using the P word casually would not have thought that she was Asian. So I obviously the question remains on the board about what you have witnessed or experienced. But I suppose, introducing a distinction on the witness question. I hadn't thought of that properly. I mean, if Robert Jenrick will say in public, God, I hate it when there's all these brown and black. Well, no, let's not be unfair to Honest Bob. He said that he was uncomfortable or he couldn't believe that all the faces that he saw on his visit to Birmingham were not white. You have Nick Timothy using the phrase act of domination to describe Muslims saying prayers in Trafalgar Square. What do you think these people are like in private? How do you think that they talk when they are in private? Alan Sked, the founder of UKIP, recalled Nigel Farage using the N-word all the time, which Farage obviously denies, just like he denies abusing Jewish pupils at Dulwich College, despite so many people coming forward to share their memories of it, and precisely nobody coming forward publicly with their own name, although lots of people did. They just haven't come forward and put their names to the denials or the fact that it didn't happen. He will always deny it because, you know, it wasn't recorded or it didn't happen. Perfectly possible. What are they like in private? There's a thing from Kathy that really resonated with me in the last hour. The first lesson I was taught in racism awareness training decades ago was don't be the person you can say that to. Don't laugh at the joke. Don't let the slur slide. If you don't speak up, they assume you agree. Don't be the person they can say that to. And, you know, again, racism awareness training decades ago, there's a phrase. How long ago, when was it that particular pendulum swung? When did we start being told that unconscious bias training or racism awareness training was woke or unnecessary? It clearly isn't. The people who really think it's unnecessary are the people like that ticket inspector on that train who's got no idea that she's even doing it. It's a black woman in first class. Do you know that this is first class? It's a white woman in first class. Could I see your ticket, please? She's got no idea. I don't think she has. Maybe you think I'm being too generous, and that's why a conversation like this one is tricky territory, but I think we can trust each other to navigate it sensibly and intelligently. That what on earth happens in private? So what you have experienced, obviously, applies to everybody because you may have been in the room where it happened or you may have been the target of the normalised hatred. But also, what about the stuff that we've witnessed or the stuff that you've witnessed when there isn't anybody present from an ethnic minority? Or even, I presume, at some of the meetings of some of our political parties, that the people from the ethnic minorities have made it absolutely clear that they're supremely comfortable with and entirely on board with the racism that defines your political movement. What are people saying and doing? I mean, here's the problem as well. That's the area where you don't really know what's changed, or at least I don't know what's changed, but you might. So people are now in social gatherings or at work or saying things to you that they would definitely not have said 10 years ago, even though there is nobody present who is the target of their normalised hatred, the target of their racism. Listen to this one. This one chimes, I suspect. I was out in Worcester meeting up with a group of a dozen old school friends from Luckton. We're all turning 60 this year, and I was shocked when one woman from our group went up to one of the guys, as in, and this is exactly it, isn't it? Don't be the person that you think you can say this to. Went up to one of the guys and tapped the centre of his forehead with her index finger and said, "No, you can't have a council house," which was the punchline of a racist joke from the 70s and the 80s. I literally couldn't believe what she had done in a public place. I stood there in disbelief. I would have said something, as I'm an outspoken lefty, but we were axe throwing at the time and had a whole evening planned. You were on Foregate Street, weren't you? I know exactly where you were for your axe throwing adventure. Several of the group were moaning about immigration as we were all enjoying the fun ambience of the Turkish restaurant, but none of them saw the irony, and I did point that out. It was all very telling and very sad. Nobody would have said any of it openly 10 or even 20 years ago. So there it is. And I'm not having a go. I'm really not. But imagine how... you don't have to imagine it happened. Look at the juxtaposition of these two texts that arrived within the same 5-minute window of the programme. I literally couldn't believe what she had done in a public place. I stood there in disbelief. I would have said something, as I'm an outspoken lefty, but we were axe throwing at the time and had a whole evening planned. You don't have to be a lefty to find racism repugnant, of course, but people who are racist like to pretend that that is the case. And the same little 5-minute window. That's extraordinary. Actually, I tell a lie. They both came in at exactly 10:49, both of those texts. The other one being the first lesson I was taught in racism awareness training decades ago was don't be the person you can say that to. Don't laugh at the joke. Don't let the slur slide. If you don't speak up, they assume you agree. There's a group there. You're not the only one in it. And nobody knows what they do in those circumstances until it happens to them. But it wasn't just you. It's literally the enactment of one of the first racist jokes I can remember ever hearing, actually. I didn't really understand it at the time. And someone is reenacting it in 2026. And nobody in the group. And I presume the fella who was targeted by this as well had to sort of grin and bear it as well, because nobody else in the group objected. And I read that in the same moment that I read the message from Kathy about don't be the person you can say that to. Don't laugh at the joke. Don't let the slur slide. All right, I didn't laugh at the joke, but I let the slur slide. If you don't speak up, they assume you agree. Everyone does. That's how it happens, isn't it? It's how it spreads. So, with the constant caveat that I fully appreciate that this is a tricky path to go down, what's happening in private now with regards to the normalisation of racism and sexism, remember, is what Bridget Phillipson talked about, but we've gone down one route. We can go further down the other one later or another day or now if you want to. But the stuff that's happening in private that perhaps shows the water temperature getting even higher, it's getting even hotter. The normalisation of racism we've always approached together, you and I, by discussing outbursts of racism in public, experiences of racism in public, some implicit, some explicit, some low level, some high level. What on earth is going on in the rooms where there isn't a brown face or a black face, the kind of rooms that Honest Bob Jenrick dreams of living in exclusively, or the kind of television scenarios that Sarah Pochin lies awake at night fondly imagining? What's going on in private that you can't quite believe? 0345 60 60 973 is the number you need. But that's only part of the conversation. I don't want to abandon the questions that we were asking in the first hour, which is the missed moments. As the temperature of the water increases and the frog begins to boil, what are the moments that you think back on as proof of or evidence of the change in the weather, the change in the public discourse, the change in our politics, the fact that, as the new Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson says today, racism and sexism have been normalised in the UK. Conservative and Reform MPs making racist remarks, accusing the police of not taking violence against women and girls seriously enough. The last caller brilliantly kept talking about the respectability of these positions have been offered a veneer of respectability when once they would have been shut down. You know, that's why political correctness existed. You literally can't say that, to which racists respond by saying, well, you can't say anything anymore. So you can say whatever you want, just don't be racist. I remember that call that I took on the programme years and years and years ago. Someone complaining about not being able to say what you want to say anymore, and he just wanted to say that Pakistani people smelt, and he said it on the radio. I don't know if the clip still exists. You can read about it. I've never left me that. It was one of those moments in my career where I sort of realised this is a weird job. This is a really weird job. Go on, say it, John. Say the thing you think you're not allowed to say on the radio. And he did. And what do you smell of? What do they smell of, mate? He said, curry. And I said, do you like curry, John? And he said, yes, James. I don't know why that stuck with me. I don't know why it still sticks with me now, but maybe it's because it provides a veneer of hope that if you actually properly interrogate and examine these racist positions held by people who insist they're not allowed to say what they want to say, you might help them to realise that the innate ridiculousness of the position that they've been pushed into. But then again, I am nothing if not an optimist.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 17 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Let me rattle through a few texts before we get back to the phones. Social media's anonymity has allowed, via osmosis, a boiling of the frog and of the brain's regulator of decency. I like that, Nick. What someone would 5 years ago only briefly think is now something they can say openly in public in front of strangers. I'd go further, of course. You say it openly in public in front of strangers. A, you don't have to use your real name, and B, you'll get more dopamine. You'll get more of a hit out of the responses to it, especially on the racistly engineered Twitter platform, than you're going to get almost anywhere else in your life, that short-term dopamine hit. So you're going to go back for more. Jack writes, I know an ambulance driver who regularly uses casual racist language. He has in the past used words I didn't even understand to describe people, and when I asked what he meant, he said, oh, sorry, the black people. It's in answer to the question, really, of what happens when there aren't any people of colour around, because it is likely to be worse, isn't it? Not always, though. Nick in Croydon writes, I like my kebab like I like my country, plain and white. I recently heard this in a kebab shop, James. The staff and all of us customers couldn't stop laughing at this bloke who couldn't understand the irony of the filth he was coming out with while ordering the food he was ordering. It's awful, James, but the response from everyone in the queue gave me faith in humanity and that the idiots will eventually wipe themselves out. That's Croydon, isn't it? It wouldn't have had the same necessarily experience elsewhere. And the moment I knew that I didn't live in the same culture that I did when I was a kid, James writes, Helen was at my local petrol station when a woman working there casually told me that her boss was a lazy P word. I honestly thought that word had died out in my childhood. This was about 5 years ago. I reported it to the company, but even worse, nothing came of it. That's from Helen in Manchester. Tara is in Kingston upon Thames. Tara, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
It's only me. It's only me.
I know. I am what you would think of as, if you look at me, ethnically ambiguous.
Okay.
So I am half black. My mum's family are from the West Indies.
Yeah.
And my dad's family are white British. Most people think I am continental, if you like. People tend to think I'm Spanish, sometimes French, sometimes Greek. It depends. I can go anywhere and people start speaking to me in whatever language. And it's and all my friends will back this up. It's anything and everything. It just depends.
Yeah.
So I've been privy to conversations, particularly about what people really think of black people when I'm there, because they don't think I'm black.
Oh, my days.
So there's been some quite unpleasant things, which I wouldn't really share on here. But
why not?
Because I don't know if I can. Sorry.
You can't. There's words you can't say, but.
No, sorry the way it makes you feel.
Right. In that case, I don't want you to. Obviously, I just wanted to be clear on what. I didn't want you to think that you weren't allowed to. That's all. But I absolutely don't want you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable or brings back trauma.
No, but
so I'm sorry about that, Tom.
That's all right. But I suppose what I wanted to share was sort of some of the way it happened, sort of casually.
Yes. And
in that kind of flippant, who wouldn't agree with me kind of way. But I've been in I've got a relatively senior position at work. I work in finance. I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
And we've been shortlisting in the past, and this is not in the employer I'm at now. They are very different.
Sure.
But in the employer that I was at and in the past, we have been sifting through shortlisting CVs, and I have had people on the panel, you know, along with me, who would say things like, "Oh, that name sounds black."
Seriously?
Yeah.
And this is in the last... I mean, this is...
In the last 6 years.
And what can you do in those moments?
I said, "I'm black." And they said, "Oh, I didn't mean it. Just sometimes they..." And it was all very stuttery. And we moved past it quite quickly, and they apologised to me later on. But what it really brought back to me was things that my mum said to me in my childhood. So my parents split up a long time ago. I don't really have anything to do with my dad and his family. So I was brought up by my West Indian family, if you like, British West Indian, but West Indian family. And it was always apparent that me and my cousins, actually, we all look like we are something else.
Yeah, I
we
understand.
do not look typical. And my mum always said to us, "Never forget, because they won't."
And you thought, "I will leave it out, Mum. The world's moved on."
Yeah, you do. Because
I know you do.
Because I'm 8 and I'm 7 and I've got my friends and I'm doing my thing and I'm playing princesses and all the rest of it. But and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like beaten into me. But she just said, "Never forget, because they won't." And she's right. And I'm 48 and they don't. And I'll just briefly, I had a family WhatsApp group with my husband's family, who are white British, who are, for the most part, wonderful.
Yes.
But during the time of the riot, there was an extremely inflammatory comment by one older relative, and I confronted it and I left a WhatsApp group, and it's changed the way I feel about some members of that family forever, who I've been part of for 20 years.
And I'm not sure anyone will appreciate how hard that is for you, because, you know, surface level, it's all crikey, we probably went a bit too far. But for you, it's shaking something really profound inside you. It's the love that you want to feel, or the family feeling that you want to have with these people, and you realise that you can't because of the way that they look at people like you.
Yeah. Or then it becomes, "Oh, but you're different because I've got a professional job." Whatever nonsense they want to say. I'm not different. I'm exactly the same.
Well, so am I, actually, on the inside. but on the outside, obviously there are a few visible distinctions. What's extraordinary about the riots, which a lot of people are picking up on, actually, I'll read you this from Carl in Liverpool, Tara. "I left a barber's halfway through a haircut after a robust discussion with a previously quiet barber turned into a racist and misogynistic rant after the Southport killings." And that means that these people are siding with the race rioters. They're siding with the pogroms. They're siding with the woman calling for people to be set on fire in hotels. And do they realise that that's what they're doing? Do they realise that is a simple choice, regardless of whether you're racist or not? Are you in favour of race riots? And your husband's relative is shouting from the rooftops, "Yes, I am. I'm on their side."
I don't often get really, really shocked, but I was. That's one of the things. I really, really was, and I couldn't. And I don't ignore it, but I really couldn't ignore it. I couldn't deal with it quietly, if you like. And as I've got older, and maybe it's my age, I don't deal with things quietly anymore. I can't.
Okay, well, look what happens if you don't. You know, look what happens. It can never get better, can it? It can only get worse. I've asked almost everybody this, so I'll ask you as well. Are we putting a timescale on this? Are we thinking that things have got worse?
Oh, they have. 100% they have. So, I mean, I went to school in the 80s and 90s, and my school, I went to South London school, very, very mixed. And there were obviously tensions. I'm not pretending it was perfect, but it was very different. I had friends of all different backgrounds, and we all went to each other's houses and we played, and I didn't feel unwelcome. And it was only a few people, and everybody knew who they were, who were this awful, and it was sort of, you stayed away from them and you sort of dealt with it. It just feels like it's under the surface everywhere at the moment, and I do feel it. And
I'm sorry.
I think one of the things that I find really hard to admit is if I look at my children who are, just, the way genes work, they look white. One of them's got blonde hair and blue eyes. So nobody thinks I'm his mother, let alone that he's got a black grandmother and he's West Indian.
And you just think their life is going to be easier?
Yes, I do, and I hate to say that.
Hey, it's just true. Can I tell you a funny story, or would it be inappropriate?
No, do.
Okay, so when I was about 12, right, my mum took me to get my hair cut by her friend Ian, who was a gay man, and a lovely bloke. And he said to her afterwards, he said, "Don't worry, he's absolutely straight." I don't know, looking back, whether Mum was worried that I was spending too much time in drama club or anything like that. And I said to Mum, I said, "Why is he telling you that that's good news? He's gay." And she said, "He just knows that your life will be so much easier as a consequence." There's nothing to feel bad about. It's a reflection of the sad world that we live in. It's nothing sad about your reaction to that. Is there?
No, I suppose.
No, there isn't. Come on, it's true. I wish it wasn't true, but it is, and that's not your fault, and it's not on you.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Well, you take care. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
You too.
Thank you.
Look what we've done. It's 11:28. The land that Nigel built, eh? That's what we're talking about. I think it would be inappropriate to pretend otherwise. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Bridget Phillipson's conversation about racism and sexism is our focus at the moment, looking at the things that perhaps are said in contexts like the one we just heard about, where there is a black woman in the room whose colleagues don't realise she's black. Just pause, I think, out of respect for her, respect for Tara. Just pause for a moment and imagine what that would be like. So your mum's black. Mum who's raised you more or less on her own. And you're sitting in a room leafing through CVs, and one of your colleagues says, "Oh dear, that name sounds a bit black." I'm never going to feel that. Never going to have that. You're never going to have that if you're white. You're just never going to have it. It's never going to happen to you. And not in this country, not in this cycle of history. It's not impossible that it could happen in other contexts and other dimensions and other universes, but you're never going to know what that feels like. And all you can really do, if you're one of the people that's never going to know what it feels like, is find out, get as close as you can, but most of all, care. Just care. And if you care, then as Kathy was taught at her race awareness classes months ago, then you won't be the person to whom other people think they can say that stuff. You won't be the person who laughs at the joke, albeit uncomfortably, or the comment, albeit uncomfortably, because you want to keep the waters calm. You won't let the slur slide, because if you don't speak up, they will assume that you agree. But it's a heck of a lot harder than it sounds, and it's all very well for me sitting here all holier than thou saying this is what you have to do and this is how you have to behave. That's why the phone lines are open, so that you can tell me what has happened in your world. 0345 606 0973. Here's Dominic Ellis with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
33 minutes after 11 is the time. Just to go back to Carl in Liverpool, half of whose message I read out to Tara about realising how bad things are getting when people in your circle started siding with the racist rioters during the Farage riots a couple of summers ago. If, like me, you were worried about his hair because he walked out of a barber shop halfway through a haircut, then worry not, because the story has a second part. I know you're worried about my hair, James, he writes, but cutter punks in Liverpool have solved all my barbering issues, and it's the most welcoming and open barber shop I've ever been to. So there is Carl in Liverpool, putting our minds at rest and angling shamelessly for a free haircut. So good luck with that, Carl. We continue with this conversation. Helen and Mark are up next, but I just want to do something else in case I forget. I failed you, by the way. Again, I'm sorry. I can't think of a way of having a phone in about how bored you are by coverage of Harry and Meghan. I don't even know. I haven't even come up with what the word is to describe a brain that wants to have a phone in about how bored you are by something. Give me a ring and tell me how bored you are. It's not going to work, is it? It's not. I mean, even by the standards of someone who probably unjustifiably likes to think that he shifts occasionally the parameters of traditional radio phone-in programmes a bit. And I know what that's like. That's like having a little sign up behind you saying you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps. But I can't come up with it. I've got nothing. How are we going to have a phone-in about how bored you are? A phone-in for people bored by this story, but at the same time somehow about the story that you're bored by. Sigh of relief in the production office, I have to tell you, and indeed quite possibly the rest of the country, that we're not going to be trying that. Well, it's 11:34. I don't know what we're going to be doing at 12, but I'll get this out of the way first. This is just because you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you, so I'm going to do it in real time. You may be aware that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are moving house. It was reported yesterday. That's the story. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, or if you prefer, Harry and Meghan, are moving house. And that involves a change of country, because their current house is in California and their new house will be back in Britain. That's the story. Couple, as Private Eye will almost certainly report in their next edition, couple moves house. And now we turn to the Daily Mail newspaper and wonder how they can turn three words, or indeed we wonder what exactly they can turn three words into. So those three words, once again, couple moves house, right? And remember, this is a newspaper that was at the forefront of the pursuit of Professor Jason Arday and many of the people in the broadcast world who were also very much at the forefront of that demonisation, the gleeful coverage of that story. Have not said his name since he died, which I continue to find absolutely extraordinary. But the shift from Jason Arday to Meghan Markle will be both profound and denied. But let's not go there yet. Let's focus instead upon how the Daily Mail reports couple moves house. Okay, page one, front page, like the absolute splash. This is the only story on the front page of their newspaper. Three separate columnists. Sarah Vine, Harry Swanning back in, must be enraging for William. How do you know? Spoiler alert, you don't. Alison Boshoff, their friends tell me Meghan is fully behind the shock move. Right. And Robert Hardman, how this will shape future of the monarchy. Okay, it's good that we're not getting carried away here, lads. Let's keep it on the down low. And then the front page, return of the prodigal prince. Sussex's security could cost taxpayers £5 million a year. Will it? No idea. But it could. It could cost £50 million. It could cost a gazillion pounds. It could cost 12p. But stick all that on the front. Doesn't matter. You've got your front page. And we're in. So on page 2 and 3, they have some other stories. One about that leaflet that I told you yesterday would be used to pretend that everybody seeking asylum is somehow a rapist, and one about Kylie Minogue's haircut. And then we turn to page 4 and 5. A deafening silence from Wills and Kate. Someone in royal circles who's dealt with the Sussexes tell me they fear there is more to this than we know. How will they pay for it all? Just 21% want them back here. That's 2 pages. So we're up to 3. Keep count. All right? 3 pages so far. 1 newspaper. 3 words. Couple moves house. Should we turn the page? That's probably it. Do you think that's it? Whoa. Return of the prodigal prince. Royal rows, recriminations, racism allegations and recollections that varied. The bruising story of the Megxit years. And then we have lots of moments. And then a column, page 7. The idea that his little brother is going to swan back in to steal William's thunder must be enraging, says Sarah Vine. Oh, I'm tired already. Are you tired yet? Already? Remember, couple moves house. How many is that, Keith? 5 pages. We're up to 4 pages, yeah, because the front pages are 1. Usually it's a spread, so it's... Are you sure, though? No, that's 5, mate. Flipping it, Keith. 1 job. You had 1 job, Keith. That's literally all I've asked you to do all week. We haven't played any jingles. We haven't done any... So you've got page 1, and then you've got a spread across 6 and 7 and 4 and 5. So that's 1 plus 2 plus 2 altogether now? No, that's 1, Keith, that finger you're holding up. 5 pages so far in the Daily Mail. Shall we turn the page again? That's got to be it. Remember, couple moves house. Yeah? Oh, here we go again. Meghan is fully behind this move. Woo! In revelations that will surprise many. God, they got on the phone quick. It only got announced yesterday. Suddenly you've spoken to all her friends and found out exactly why she's doing what she's doing. But we're up to 5 plus 2, 7 pages. In revelations that will surprise many, friends of the Sussexes tell the Mail that... Yeah, of course they do. The Duchess wants to rekindle Harry's England... Oh, be quiet. Anyway, we're up to 7. Remember? Couple, moves, house. That's it, right? That's got to be it. We're done, yeah? Oh, boy. A year ago, I was mocked for predicting this would happen, but I was right, writes someone. And someone else writes, how America fell out of love with the Sussexes, from that South Park savaging to the grifters furore. That's pages 10 and 11, which is 11 minus 2 equals 9. 9 pages so far out of 3 words. Couple, moves, house. And that's it. Surely that's it. That's 9 pages. Ready? Are we going to break double figures? Whew. As Camilla's big biographer, I fear this could be the test of her lifetime. And the real reason my pal Harry is coming back. We're up to page 13, 11 of which have been dedicated to a story summarised in just 3 words. Couple, moves, house. That's got to be it, right? That's got to be it. That's not it. We're up to page 14 and 15. What will our favourite jampreneur actually do in the rainy misery of an island whose affection she squandered? Rainy misery? That's unpatriotic for the Daily Mail. You can't be talking about... But anyway, it's the first really full-throated attack on Meghan. Meghan is not popular here, and she knows it. Some things are simply unforgivable. The exiles have exiled themselves from exile. That's pages 14 and 15, so we are up to 15 minus 2, 13. Lucky for some, 13 pages. Keith, take your shoes and socks off. We're up to 13. 13 pages, 1 story, 3 words. Couple, moves, house. Still going. The whole op-ed. A whole op-ed. The parable of Harry and the House of Windsor. The Friday essay, no less. This is not a happy ever after, and there are still bumps in a long road ahead. But a divided royal house is a diminished royal house. And that is 17. That's up to page 17. So 15 entire pages of coverage of a story best encapsulated in the 3 words, couple, move, house. And one more for luck, shall we? Have a little... Oh, it's all right. There's an Aldi advert on page 18. And on page 19, it's Dicky Littlejohn writing about gypsies. So, normality is restored. Nature is healing. To be fair to the fella, he probably hasn't noticed yet that Harry and Meghan are moving back to Britain because it hasn't been on a 25-year-old episode of The Bill. So there it is, 15 entire pages of the Daily Mail, or it hasn't reached Florida or wherever he is writing his columns these days. It hasn't reached 15 pages. 15 pages on 1 story. Now, I don't know what word you would use to describe that. That's just bonkers, right? I mean, it is absolutely unhinged and insane. And it's probably why I wanted today to conduct a phone-in for people who don't care. Because it's not just the Daily Mail, of course. The Daily Express has not gone quite as bonkers, I don't think. No, it really hasn't. Fair play to them for once. They've actually got some news in their paper today. And the broadcast media has gone slightly, but nothing like that. The Daily Mail, if they had any friends, they'd stage an intervention, surely, with that level of obsession. It's a bit like, I don't know, vapor trails in the sky or vaccine scepticism. When someone that you used to know goes completely doolally and you don't know quite what to do about it. There is the newspaper equivalent of that. But once again, breaking news. If you missed it yesterday, couple moves house. 15 pages in a national newspaper. And, of course, as I mentioned at the outset, the shift from attacking Professor Jason Arde to going back onto the attack of Meghan Markle. What would those 2 human beings have in common that might explain some of the levels of vitriol being displayed towards them by some corners, the gleeful vitriol by some corners of the British media? Most corners, many corners of the British media, I don't know. But it leads us back into the conversation that we're having instead, which is about Bridget Phillipson's comments regarding racism and sexism being normalised in the UK. I mean, to be fair to the Daily Mail, you can't expect them to report in detail on that because... they'd have to say sorry, wouldn't they? Racism and sexism being normalised in the UK. And we're very sorry about it. They're not going to write that editorial anytime soon, so it's left to us to explore what it actually means. You've got people like Nick Timothy complaining about people praying. You've got people like Robert Jenrick complaining about people being brown. And you've got people like the ones we've been listening to on the programme today reflecting and reporting on what that does to us, how that changes public discourse, what that does to the population, how it pollutes families as well as friendships, how it actually pours poison into every corner of the country, because you don't get to control where the poison lands or which WhatsApp group the poison pops up on or what train carriage it appears in. The question is pretty simple. What have you witnessed or experienced that supports Bridget Phillipson's thesis that racism and sexism have become in recent years, or are becoming in recent years, normalised in our country? It's 11:45. More of your calls after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I think another day, when we return to this territory, we'll look more explicitly, more exclusively at family rifts. The number of messages I'm getting about not being able to talk to your mum anymore, or having a fallout with old friends, or because what choice have you got? Either you're the one who calls it out, or you sit there silently and let it slide. And that is obviously going to be true of people of colour as well. My friend Wayne has been teaching me about this for years, and to be honest, I probably didn't pay as much attention as I should have done at the beginning. The common experience of his life as a mixed-race man, growing up in Basildon, is to be told by his lifelong friends and his school friends that they don't mean him. Oh, no, you're all right, mate. I don't mean you. I probably didn't fully register how significant that is, what that must be like as an experience, because it's constant. You know, it's absolutely constant. And as the conversation, the Faragist conversation about immigration or about people who are foreign has changed and moved and migrated and grown, so the refrain has become ever more constant. Oh, no, not you. I don't mean you. I found myself when the full details of Henry Novak's murder were revealed and Farage immediately jumped on the bandwagon, I could not help thinking that it is only 10 years that you were trying to turn the country against people with names like Novak. It is literally only a decade since you were telling everyone that the Poles were the problem, or the Romanians, and now here you are, someone with a Polish name gets murdered by someone with brown skin, and you are shifting the focus of the hatred so effortlessly, claiming to be on the side of the person with a name that you would have been demonising 10 years ago, and yet here you are claiming to care. Absolutely extraordinary. And we are today, I suppose, reviewing the results. Helen is in Trafford. Helen, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I suppose I am one of the people that you're talking about with the family rifts that come about from these things.
Go on.
My family are white. We're all white. We don't really have, much diverse heritage in our gene pool.
Yeah.
Several years ago now, I blame Brexit. I think my auntie and uncle probably always held racist views.
Right.
But certainly since Brexit, it seems to be more acceptable for them to voice these things.
Yes.
It really came to a head I was trying to work it out, it must be about 7 years ago now on Christmas Day.
Right.
Over Christmas dinner, they were perfectly happy to be using the M word and the P word.
Oh.
And I've called them out for it. It's descended into a huge family row. I actually ended up leaving. I've never had Christmas with my family since.
And all you'd done was
object
to them using those slurs.
Yeah.
And then you have a broader conversation as a consequence, but that was the trigger.
That's the trigger. For me, what is much worse than my auntie and my uncle using that language, I am so ashamed of the apathy my mother showed.
Oh.
That's my mum. We've had such huge rows about it since, and we're kind of okay now, but right. I have lost so much respect for my mum because my mum did not raise me to be that kind of person, and I know those are not the views that my mum holds. But the fact that she will let somebody sit in her house and use that language, I don't think my mum would have allowed that kind of 10, 15 years ago.
It's as if the tide that she would once have turned back can't be turned back.
Yeah, and my mum
anymore.
now, when you speak to her about it, it's like, oh, well, she's allowed her opinion. It's like, yeah, she is allowed her opinion, but you are allowed to tell her that her opinion is wrong.
And her defence,
she's in your house on Christmas Day.
Her rationale would be that she loves you both, and she wants to.
Oh, my mum's not very confrontational.
No,
as a person anyway.
Sure.
So I understand that it's hard for her, but it makes me so ashamed to be part of the family.
Oh, I mean, you've been put in an absolutely hideous position, and there weren't any people of colour in the room where it happened. It's mad, right? This poison reaches parts where we probably didn't realise it would reach when we first started seeing the reversal of race relations in this country.
Just in the last year, I've had a locksmith who came to my house who ended the interaction complaining to me about immigrants.
Yeah.
And when I basically said that I didn't think it was immigrants, straight away he was like, oh, right, because he clearly looked at me as a white person and just thought I was going to agree with everything he was saying.
Yes.
It's very, very scary place to be living. As a white person, I'm finding it scary to be living in this country. I cannot imagine how terrifying it must be.
You take a plurality of people who don't think that either they're aware of the immigration figures, in which case they couldn't possibly think that it's the biggest problem facing the country, or they genuinely don't think that it's the biggest problem facing the country. And the number of them, I wonder what percentage of us would actually say something, you see, because that bloke is going into houses and saying things that are racist or at the very least provocative and ignorant, and most people will make him a cup of tea and wait until he's gone. Some people will agree with him, but he's got no way of knowing how or what percentage of the country is where he is, because it takes quite a lot to say, I got out of a taxi once about 20 years ago, Helen. That's the only thing I can think of where I hope there have been other occasions, but I don't find myself in these situations very often. So I'm sorry, mate, I'm going to have to get out. I find what you're saying absolutely repellent. And I got out and I felt like a curious combination of pompous so-and-so and righteous dude. But how many other people have found themselves in situations like that one and said nothing to the bloke, so he's not going to review his position. He's never going to stop and have a think. And if you say nothing, as Kathy said in that message that's been popping up throughout the programme, he will assume that you agree. If you say nothing, he will assume that you agree.
I don't agree with him.
No, but did you tell him?
Yeah, I did tell him. Yeah. To be honest, it was probably quite a nice conversation, because by the end of it, I think he actually started to question some of his beliefs a little bit.
Good for you. You can do my holiday cover.
I wish.
Thank you, Helen. That's the other challenge, of course, which I'm not very good at, which is being, I'm probably getting better, but being a little bit more amenable and a little bit more forgiving and a little bit friendlier, and not actually saying, you filthy racist, get out of my house, I never want you to darken my doorstep again. Saying instead, that's what, when people ask me, what can you do if you find yourself coming up against stuff like that? I always say, just ask some questions. And try not to do it, perhaps in a way that I did once. So that funeral I was telling you about with the Nigel Farage fan, you just ask some questions about, what it is. If it was Brexit, you just say, what is the law that you can't wait not to have to obey anymore? Or what is the impact that it's had on your life? Or your wife is in a home now, isn't she? What are the staff in that care home like? Because that's who you're talking about, And these things, I don't know whether they work or not, but what else have you got? Mark's in Chelmsford. Mark, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Well, a long-time listener, Helen set me up for a blinder on this one, unfortunately, because I am a white tradesman who works around people's houses.
Gosh.
And a lot of people, over the last decade or so, coincidentally,
yes,
have just assumed that I am, either racist or up for a bit of banter.
Yeah, banter, eh? That dread word.
Bit of banter.
A little bit of it's just banter. So what sort of things happen? What would be a common experience or a specific experience?
Common ones are often if I'm just going to pop out and get a sandwich or something, it'll be, I wouldn't go to, that corner shop.
Really?
The one, it's run by Pete, the slurs and all that. And also it will be slurs against other tradesmen if there have been, works in the house, etc. And said, it isn't just racism, it's also sexism, because, why not double down? They'll have had, a plumber in or an electrician at Sparky, whatever, painter, decorator. as, oh, he wasn't very good. Not only did he have quote unquote an accent,
right,
or it was a woman, whatever. Like, it is just, it's definitely getting worse.
And that's, I mean, you're in a particular position, aren't you? To
I am, yeah.
Because
that's the hard bit.
You're probably best qualified to comment on the change, the pace of change, than many of us, because you've been doing the job for a while.
Got a thumb on the pulse, unfortunately.
Say again?
I've got a thumb on the pulse of it, unfortunately.
Yes, exactly. Because people are going to talk to you in a different way today from how they talked to you 10 years ago. And
it's hard because also you're in somebody's house, and
you need the money, mate, as well. You don't want to be able to say, paint your own bedroom.
You have to have a bit of a rapport.
Yeah.
You have to have a bit of a rapport and be polite and amiable, and, you want to get a recommendation. You want them to say, oh, that guy, yeah, he was good, very friendly, and he did a good job as well.
So do you have any tactics, or do you sometimes suck it up? I'm the client, and I say, don't go to that shop. It's a pea shop.
So I do also have autism. So sometimes it will like double punches me. I'm blindsided, and I'll go, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so like my face will, my eyebrows will go up. I'll be completely nonplussed. What the hell? What? And often that is enough to make them realise, oh, he's not down for this. He's not up for,
So subtle tells then, and subtle gives.
It's an involuntary tell on my part, but it seems to get the job done.
Oh, that's nice to know. That's probably for the best.
The other one is that if I'm on a lunch break, I'll be I'll be listening to LBC sometimes, and if these people care enough, they will recognise your voice and they can hear it through the window, which is quite interesting.
Aye, yeah, of course. Of course.
Oh, it's him. I'm getting commands beamed into my brain from wherever you are in London.
I hear you. No, I'm losing the line now, Mark, but I like that idea of the physical tell somehow being louder or speaking more than the actual words that you might deploy. And we must have a phone in one day about how you actually deal with it. What do you do? Helen has answers to it. Mark has ways of dealing with it. Tara has obviously a very simple response to it by dint of being someone of mixed heritage, but who looks Southern European as opposed to Caribbean, and she'll simply say, when a colleague says, oh, let's not hire this person, their name sounds a bit black, she'll say, I'm black. Whew, does that person change, do you think? Do they then stop doing it, or do they just check around the table and do a kind of Dulux colour chart before saying something racist again? I don't know.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 4 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It spawned a few ideas, that last conversation. That's probably the fact that it went on for 2 hours speaks about how fertile that ground is for us to explore together. But I will return to some of those issues, some of those questions, particularly perhaps the family rifts, and the B, what do you do? How do you play it? This one made me laugh. From Katie. James, I tried your ask questions method, and my friend who was ranting about immigration said, oh, you're doing that LBC thing to me. I don't know whether to be flattered that we've reached parts that other radio programmes cannot reach, or indeed to be dismayed that the evidence-based approach to these issues can be so, thanks to us, can be so easily dismissed. We tried, she writes, but alas, I think a lot of this has come since Musk bought Twitter. Historically, people used to get a worldview based on their life experiences. Now people go online and their opinions are driven by their timelines, which are going to be biased towards racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. It's really, let me get this right, it's really scary, this world we live in and the direction that it's going. If you can work out how to make people look outside and touch grass, then you'll be the billionaire and you can make your own platform to challenge Musk. That's beautifully put. And if only. A little later at this hour, an absolutely extraordinary story for you. Mrs. O'Brien brought this to my attention, and I thought, I said to her, and I very rarely do this, I said, are you sure? Is that absolutely what... I mean, I did it very diplomatically. Is that absolutely what's happened? And it is... I should have known, shouldn't I? She was 100% right. And it is a story that involves... I'm going to give you a clue without giving the whole thing away. If you're already across the story, you'll probably work it out from the clue, but you might not be across the story because it's not reached that many outlets as far as I can tell. It's a story about the destruction of rare books. the physical destruction of rare second-hand books. And why on earth do you think that might be going on? If you know the answer, don't be silly and clog up my inbox, which I'm not looking at, by the way, except during breaks. That's the new rule. It's worked quite well, that, for a new rule, Keith, by our standards. I've kind of observed it fairly effectively. But when you find out why enormous numbers, it would seem, of rare books, second-hand or pre-owned, rare... what's the word? There's another word for it. Not second-hand, a rare... not vintage... Well, anyway, rare books are being destroyed. When I tell you what it is, and we'll speak to a journalist that's been investigating it, you'll go, oh, blimey. And then you'll all go, oh, of course, what else could it have been, apart from Nazis? 6 minutes after 12 is the time. I want to talk about maths next. We never do. It's Alexei Sale on Full Disclosure this week as well. Two things I must remember to do this hour. The story about the books and the little clip of Full Disclosure featuring the one and only Alexei Sale. I want to talk about maths next, and there are a couple of reasons why. The first is I've noticed clever people who I admire talking about how elements of our education system are going great guns. I think we're really good, for example, at now. I mean, we could be a heck of a lot better, but obviously recognising and seeking to deal with neurodiversity is an area in which we have done quite well, albeit with limited resources. But maths, Michael Gove, a demonised figure among teachers, but it would appear that in one area, in one subject, in maths, the man played a blinder when he was Education Secretary. And if you think about it, it could make perfect sense. Because if you are, as we discussed yesterday, putting everything on exams and nothing on coursework, then maths is the subject that is most likely to benefit from that, I think. You know, maths is maths. It is literally 2 + 2 = 4. There's only one answer to a maths question. Certainly at GCSE and A-level, and I think at undergraduate. I'm probably at master's level as well. If you get to PhD, surely there's only ever one. That's a classic mystery hour question, if ever there was one, isn't it? Is there only ever one answer to a maths question? But there is, right? There's only ever one correct answer to a maths question. Isn't there? And that is what makes it unique. Because, you know, tell me about Hamlet's motivation in Act 2, Scene 3 of Hamlet. There's a million different answers to that question. Why did Napoleon invade Belgium? There's a million different... Do you see what I mean? You've always got interpretations. You can't write books about maths that disagree with each other. So there's something about maths that makes it academically unique. And when the head of the exams regulator suggests that England is becoming a maths powerhouse as a consequence of reforms that Michael Gove introduced, you have to set aside your prejudices regarding Michael Gove, and indeed your perfectly well-founded evidence-based disapproval of so much that he did to the country by jumping on... Well, he didn't actually jump on the Brexit bandwagon, did he, like Boris Johnson? I think he was actually a true believer. But the disdain for expertise and the appalling kind of... what would the word be? Pettifogging? I don't know, but this sort of affable exterior masking a dark heart of nation-damaging delusion. But on maths, he appears to have got it right. GCSE results for hundreds of thousands of teenagers yesterday showed that boys had narrowed the pass rate gap that we talked about yesterday, and that maths was going great guns. Maths mastery programs used in other countries such as Singapore, included in Gove's reform from 2010 to 2014, have seen the chief of Ofqual saying that maths grades, we've had a strong focus on mastery approaches, making sure every step is properly understood. Those developments are now beginning to reap dividends. We're becoming a maths powerhouse. I did have a little look at him, the claim on the front page of the Times where Michael Gove used to work, of course, that this was down to Gove's reforms. And it certainly wasn't among his first comments on the subject, and I don't know whether someone said, "Is this down to Michael Gove?" and he responded by saying, "Yeah, that could actually be part of it." But there it is. I mean, we are getting much, much better at maths. And I thought it would be an opportunity to... In fact, I'm just reading it again. Forgive me for being all distracted. Belcom's comments came after Andy, but GCSE results, strong maths results among 16-year-olds. Belcom told the Times, "We've had a strong focus on mastery approaches, making every step. The development's now beginning to reap dividends. We're becoming a maths powerhouse." So they haven't actually managed to get onto the front page. The head of the examinations authority actually praising Michael Gove about this. I mean, I was a rubbish newspaper journalist back in the day, so I don't want to read too much into it, but you'd have thought that if he'd said, "Good old Michael Gove, he's the one that delivered this," then they would actually have stuck it in the front page story. I haven't got time to read all of page 10 and all of page 11, but if the Times have put Michael Gove's name in their headline and it doesn't actually appear anywhere in any of the articles, that would be possibly a case for missed information. But I digress. I have about 3 questions about maths. One of which will be, why did we do we still live in a country where being bad at maths is a badge of honour? Do you remember that? This is going to depend, I hope this depends entirely on how old you are, but being bad at maths was a badge of honour. It was a kind of proof that you were artistic and poetic and romantic, and that you sort of understood the music of the spheres, and that you had a rich and varied inner life, or you were good at maths, in which case you were sort of robotic and a bit like Mr. Logic, I think his name was, in Viz magazine, and that you didn't really engage very much in emotions or in poetry or the arts. You were either good at maths or you were artistic, which is bonkers, really, because it's perfectly possible to be both. Why? I mean, I don't know if we ever got an answer to that question. Why did being bad at maths become a badge of honour? The second question, I don't think it'd be a bit dry to have a conversation with maths teachers about whether or not Michael Gove really has effected a massive change. I'm happy to give him the benefit of the doubt if you are. You can ring me to answer the question, by the way, of whether or not you can have more than one answer to a maths question. That's how Mystery Hour started, by me saying something on the radio without really thinking about it, and you turning up with far more interesting things to say on the subject than I ever have. But it seems unlikely at GCSE level that there can be 2 correct answers to a maths question. The double-headed thing that I'm thinking about at the moment, right, is this. The first is, how much does being bad at maths hold you back? I mean, you being bad at maths, what impact has it had on your life? And this, I think, for reasons that will become clear when I ask you the second question, this, I think, demands quite a broad sweep of your existence, because I want to know whether it matters now. You don't just have a sort of calculator in your phone. You've got the technological capability to do things with that device in your pocket that you would once have needed a computer the size of a small building to do. I mean, you need to know what to ask a calculator, don't you? You need to know what to ask a computer in order to get what you need from it. I mean, do you probably still struggle with fractions? Or I just simultaneously find myself wondering how much your life is affected by, and we discovered something on the programme 20 years ago called dyscalculia. We didn't discover it, sorry, I should rephrase that slightly. I mean, we're good, but we're not that good. I heard about it for the first time, and we did a phone-in about it, and a number of people, again, a bit like the fellow who couldn't say what he wanted to say about Pakistani people. It was one of those moments back in the day when I realised this job was magical, potentially, because people who'd spent their whole lives being not just bad at maths, but almost sort of preternaturally poor at maths, like it was a language you couldn't even understand the syllables of. Maths was almost like a form of number blindness to you. And we'd all heard about dyslexia, but we'd never heard about dyscalculia. And suddenly, my phone lines lit up with people saying, that's me. I'm not just bad at maths. It's like a dyslexic person looking at words when I look at numbers. And we'd never heard the phrase before. Some people had, otherwise we never would have got told about it. But it was an extraordinary moment, and the stories of how people coped with being really bad or number blind or just being incapable of doing mathematics were incredibly moving. The things you do to mask it, the things you do to hide it, are quite powerful. So how I don't think anyone can answer the question of why being bad at maths became a badge of honour, but take that as a challenge. 0345 6060973. When I was growing up, I wanted to get good grades, but I was almost proud of the fact that I was less likely to do well at maths than I was at anything else. I think I was close to that yesterday, wasn't I, when I was boasting almost about getting a grade E in AO-level statistics. I don't think I was boasting. You can tell when I'm boasting normally because my lips move. But I mean, I shouldn't have got a grade E in that, and the fact that somewhere inside me, despite being quite competitive with exam grades, I kind of thought, oh no, I'll take that bit off. I was sitting next to my mate Adam during that class, and going back to 1988 now, and we're still friends. We bonded over not paying any attention at all in our AO level statistics class. Used to play hangman a lot. I remember playing a lot of hangman. In fact, I remember when the teacher got hold of one of our exercise books, I think it was his, not mine, and just looked at it, and it was full of hangmans. Or hangmen? Is it hangmans or hangmen? Anyway, it was full of games of hangman. And there was a sort of sadness on his face that I remember, rather than anger. He was quite a mild-mannered teacher, otherwise we wouldn't have taken the mickey so completely. He was just sad that we'd apparently spent, by that point, 2 whole terms sitting in his statistics class, mostly playing hangman. I don't remember what we did with homework. But anyway, something silly about being almost proud of being bad at maths. That's question number 1. Why? Why did we turn being bad at maths into some sort of badge of honour? 0345 6060973. Number 2, if you have dyscalculia, even if you've never heard the word before, if mathematics is to you an entirely foreign language, just give us a quick heads up on how it's affected your life. Because my third question might be really stupid. It might be quite irresponsible, or it might be quite interesting. I don't know at this stage. It depends in a way on your answer to the second question. Does it actually matter anymore, given the prevalence of technology? What do you get? Yeah, this is me still thinking it's a badge of honour, isn't it? What do you get from studying maths when everything that you learn to do can be done more quickly by your phone? That's a genuine question, which I'm struggling not to phrase in a dismissive way. Because I was always bad at maths compared to all the other subjects. What do you get from studying maths that makes a mockery of the suggestion that you don't need to, because you can just tap everything into your phone these days, get an answer in a nanosecond? So if you're not paying attention, these are the 3 questions that we're currently looking at. Why did being bad at maths become a form of a kind of badge of honour? 0345 6060973. Number 2, what's it like? How does it affect your life if you are absolutely incapable at mathematics? What sort of impacts does it have? And then finally, what's the point of studying it in a world where technology can do absolutely everything for us? And that's not a rhetorical question to which the answer is there's no point, James. That's a genuine inquiry for people who are wiser than me to answer. You can tell me why studying maths is an important and even perhaps a magical thing to do. All right? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. It's 12:20.
James O'Brien on LBC.
After 12, you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm also quite old, so I don't really understand the changes to our world that have been made by insisting that you have a maths and English GCSE in order to go off and do almost anything else. So it might be an answer to the question of how does being bad at maths affect you? Not getting maths, how does it hold you back? You could be a genius in other areas, but you just can't get a pass in maths. I don't know. A genuine question about how heavy the impact of that might be. 22 minutes after 12 is the time. Shannon is in York. Shannon, what would you like to say?
Hey,
hello, Shannon.
Nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
So you just took the words out of my mouth. My daughter has had to cancel her college course doing mechanics because she can't complete maths. So she's just failed maths for the 6th time.
Oh, the poor thing. Oh,
yeah, she has dyslexia and she has dyscalculia. So she's really never going to pass maths. But
what have the grades changed over the 6 different sittings?
No. If anything, they're actually worse. But the support isn't there. You know, when she did GCSEs, it was an extra 15 minutes. Well, what is an extra 15 minutes going to do?
What difference is that going to make? And is she, what's the word that I'm looking for? Had she started the course, or is she just...
Yeah, she'd done the first year, which was the entry level, and then she failed maths. So they made her resit the same course again. And now she's just like, I'm just repeating the same things over and over again. And
poor kid. Listen, can I say something and you promise not to get cross with me?
I promise.
You don't sound certain. I don't want to risk it. It's Friday. I don't want to start.
No, go for it.
Well,
go for it.
It was I don't know if I should say, was mechanics... I mean, to me, you say mechanics, I think mathematics.
Yeah. I guess it would be like plumbing.
Yeah.
Where there would be an element of problem solving in it.
Yeah, if you're really bad at maths, was it the... But then again, this is not fair, is it? Because she can do other elements of the course. She's done well over the course of the study. She just can't get that tick in the box. Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, and it's just so frustrating for her. So she's now 18 and has totally dropped out of college and is just working, in a supermarket, which is why it's good money for her at 18. She's not going to progress in a career that she wanted to do.
No, and And what do you say to her then? Just because this is exactly what I was talking about, and I had a feeling in my head that it was that was the reason why I just picked up on the mechanics element of it was because I can see why that door has shut if you can't get a maths GCSE, but loads of other doors have shut as well. If she was doing another course at college? What if she was doing a course in something that wasn't numerical or didn't have a math? Would the absence of a maths GCSE also mean that she had to come off the course?
Yeah.
That's
no
the
matter
point.
What course, she would have to do maths.
Right.
And now that she's 18, she would have to pay for an adult course.
I don't know what to say, really. It's just brutal, isn't it, that she's kind of given up already in some ways as a consequence of this system that didn't really used to be in place. It should just be up to the teacher, shouldn't it? The teacher thinks you're up to it. The teacher thinks you're up to it. You can stay on the course.
Yeah, it definitely didn't. I mean, I was absolutely the same at school. I get really upset over maths. And in the end, my college teacher back then just sort of really helped me through the exam. But now it's so strict, they can't do that.
I didn't know that. We'll find out more about this. And I wish I could say something a little bit more encouraging or uplifting, but she's so young and she's had such a kicking from the system, hasn't she?
Yeah.
That's brutal. If you had £1 million, could you have paid someone to get her... Do you reckon a tutor could have got her through it with like incredible levels of teaching, or would it be like trying to teach me how to, I don't know, be brilliant at football?
Well, she has autism as well, so she struggles with learning, and she had a tutor. But if the information, it's like, I guess if you're dyslexic and the words are just not making sense, looking at numbers is just... especially a lot of maths questions now in GCSEs are worded. They're not just numbers anymore. It's all
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a big paragraph of like words that if you're dyslexic as well, you're just not going to get your head around.
No, that's just not fair, is it? And to have that lesson taught to you in such brutal terms at such a young age is heartbreaking. At least she's got a great mum, Shannon. I know that's not much consolation, but there'll be some kids in similar situations who haven't got someone in their corner like you, which gives her at least one big advantage in life. But yeah, there it is, that kind of guillotine almost at such a young age. I remember when we first did phone-ins about the 11 plus. I don't know why I'm all nostalgic today, thinking back to formative moments in my career as a radio presenter. But because of my background and my education, I was a big fan of grammar schools. I liked anything that kind of recognised intelligence early and rewarded it. And over the years, you've taught me that is not a recipe for an equitable society. And one of the biggest lessons I ever learned was people who failed the 11 plus and felt that the kind of mark of Cain had been put on them at the age of 12. And it's still there, except it just lands a little later. Thomas is in Sheffield. Thomas, what made you pick up the phone?
Oh, good morning.
Hello.
First, I'd like to say that I've always enjoyed listening to your show.
But?
No.
Oh, I thought there was a big but coming there. So, well, carry on, mate. Carry on. That's very kind of you.
Well, see, to give a bit of background, my dad was basically...
We're going to have to... I mean, much as you enjoy listening to the show, I'm afraid I can't enjoy listening to you while your phone line is in such a parlous state. So we will try and... what's the word I'm looking for? Rectify that. We'll try and rectify that and get back to you shortly. But in the meantime, Philip is in Lancaster. Philip, what made you pick up the phone?
Just listening to your conversation about people engaging with mathematics and convincing themselves that, they're not good at it.
Yes.
So I really struggled with maths when I was a younger person. Like, I just about managed to scrape a C in my GCSE maths. But then I've gone on, I'm currently studying for a PhD in astrophysics, which is...
Well, it's not exactly rocket science, is it, Philip?
Hey! Not quite.
How did that happen then? How did you go from struggling? Because you heard my conversation with the lady in York, and the suggestion from me, a bit clumsy, that if you're not very good at maths, then maybe mechanics isn't the path to go down. I just said exactly the same thing about astrophysics. So tell me what happened.
Yeah, well, obviously motivation comes into it. Like, I wanted to study science and I wanted to study space. I had a natural interest in it. And the maths was an obstacle and a barrier to that I knew I was going to have to take on. But one part of how I did that was I actually went to see a hypnotherapist.
Really?
Yeah, because, you talk about, like, you convince yourself you've got this sense that, I'm no good at maths,
yes.
I can't do this. And you called it a badge of honour before. That your people
not in a good way. I was complaining about the fact that I thought it was a badge of honour. I don't think it's a badge of honour anymore.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing. But I had that. I'm no good at maths. I can't do it. And actually, that attitude towards maths was the thing that was holding me back the most. And so the hypnotherapy wasn't like to suddenly make me good at maths. It was to try and remove that obstacle of me telling myself that I couldn't do it.
You were really determined to be an astrophysicist, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
That's extraordinary. So I'm going to a hypnotherapist to remove the obstacle to my dream.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I'm still not a great mathematician. I refer to myself as a reluctant mathematician.
Yes.
And I can't. If you were to give me a list of numbers to add up in my head or ask me to do some multiplication in my head, I couldn't do it.
Right.
And I used to think that being bad at mental arithmetic meant I was bad at maths.
Yes.
But actually, that is one particular skill set. And when it comes to other things in maths, most people seem to hate algebra, and I love it. Like, it seems to me
because I'm
like,
quite good at mental arithmetic, but algebra, absolutely no chance.
Yeah, I think that's quite the common way round. But to me, algebra makes sense because it's all about, like, consistent relationships and logical steps between things, and, like, getting rid of the numbers for me makes the maths easier.
Got it. I love this. When you did the hypnotherapy, can you tell me about the moment you realised it had worked?
Yeah. So during the course of the hypnotherapy, I recalled a memory of sitting in my GCSE exams, and I had scratched onto the inside cover of my calculator, "I hate maths." and that sort of just came back to me in a flash during the hypnosis. And I realised that, that was part of the embedded attitude. And so with my new calculator that I got for my doing my degree, I scratched in "I love maths" into the cover of that calculator.
Oh, that's lovely.
And that felt like a psychological turning point.
And so that's what the hypnotherapy does, is it just makes you think about things differently.
Yeah, it could just help you reset an attitude. Like I say, it's not a magic wand. Like, it would be daft to think that, you can go to see a hypnotherapist and all of a sudden you'll be, like, stood at the chalkboard like Einstein.
Yes. Yeah, well, Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting. Or something. I love that film. Yeah. It's a clown. Oh, that's a great story.
You still have to put in the legwork and put the effort in. Do.
What are you going to do with your PhD?
Well, I'm currently working out Jodrell Bank Observatory.
This is a book waiting to happen. I've got a title already for you, Philip.
Oh, go on.
The Reluctant Mathematician.
I don't know how you came up with that. That's amazing.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, mate. Whoa, so that's magical. What a lovely story. From a C in GCSE, and a subject that those of us who are never going to do a PhD in astrophysics would have just thought would have been a death knell for any such ambitions. Oh, a lovely upbeat story. It's 12:32. Matt Hewitt is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Will nail down that question of... Do you know what I try to do sometimes? I want, when we come back and Keith presses the button, I want it to sound like I've carried on talking throughout the entire break, and then you just tune back in again and I'm still wanging on. You know, when we do the fade out, which is very rare. We hardly ever... It's a perishingly rare phenomenon, that. But if someone is an absolute weapon, then we just turn them down very slowly so that they... Because you just get this instinct once in a while. I'm not going to be able to get a word in edgeways here because they know that if I can get a word in edgeways, their entire bigoted worldview is going to fall apart like a cheap suit. So I'm not going to be able to get a word in edgeways. They usually start off by insisting that I stop interrupting them, by which they mean stop actually asking me to explain my bigoted opinions, because I can't. I just want to carry on airing them. And we just fade it out. And then, because I'm still on air when that happens, but they sometimes... They turn it back up again, sometimes several hours later, and they're still wanging on. They're still giving it some, still talking. And another thing, hey, small boat, see, do. So sometimes several days later, we've come back after the weekend, and we've turned it back up again, and they're still there. They're still there, giving it some. I presume other presenters could just patch them straight to air, and they'd still be. That's extra. So sometimes I want to try and create that impression. But I don't think it would sound right if I was mid-sentence when it happens. That would just get confusing. 12:37 is the time. Alexi Sale on Full Disclosure this week. Clip incoming. And an amazing story about why rare second-hand books are being destroyed on an industrial scale. There's another little clue for you there. Why on earth are rare second-hand books being destroyed on an industrial scale? But before that, I don't think we're going to get a proper answer to the question of why being bad at maths became a badge of honour in this country. But I do want to know how being bad at maths holds you back, and a slightly more romantic tip, why studying maths matters, why it is a wonderful thing to do. Although I think we might have got that answer obliquely with Jodrell Bank Boy. Daisy's in Cheshire. Daisy, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello,
nice to talk today.
Likewise.
Maths is anyway, so I'm really glad I'm calling up today because I think maths, not being able to do maths and being absolutely terrified of it, has completely impacted my life.
Yeah, terrified is the important bit here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely sweating. So when I was a child, the maths teacher told my mum there was nothing they could do about me. Lost cause.
How old?
Can't do maths. I was 14, pre-GCSEs.
Brutal. Yeah, okay.
So, I was already coming from that of you can't do maths. Good luck.
Yeah.
Didn't pass maths. Retook them, didn't pass again. So obviously there was a lot of confidence as well. I do actually believe that if I'd have been given that level of confidence of you can do it, this is how you do it, I probably would have passed. I genuinely think a lot of it is a state of mind of...
Well, you're following on from a bloke who had hypnotherapy to overcome his
this is it, I'm having it.
There it is.
But it kind of, affected a lot of my life. I wanted to be a midwife and I couldn't. Because of maths, and then just going through my career and doing things over the years, maths has always just played a really big part. And something that I think, if you're not good at maths, you scrap by and you're just glad that you're not asked anything too crazy because you're going to be, the secret's going to come out. You're terrible at maths, but.
I've heard a lot of stories over the years, and in fact, I think it's a trope. I think it's sort of part of everybody's childhood memory. The kid in the class who absolutely dreaded the reading out loud bit, and because they were dyslexic or painfully shy, but usually it's because they're dyslexic and everyone's going to laugh at them as they try and muddle their way through The Boy Stood on the Burning Deck. And that is a commonplace story, but you are describing the mathematical equivalent of that, which is not actually a commonplace story. I mean, I guess in maths you were less likely to be asked to come to the front of the class and do a sum on the blackboard or something like that. So we don't have those moments of childhood terror, but you do. You live in constant fear of having to do maths in public.
Yes, and I do think and I'm not going to get too much into the gender thing because obviously I'm generalising, but, you know, at school, boys were good at maths, you know, this and that. But actually, I do find that now, you know, I'm in my mid-30s, that my husband does the maths stuff that we need to do at home, you know, some of the bills and stuff like that, because I just cannot go there. And I think also that's not a great thing either. So I think from my perspective, I've sort of said I'm actually not going to keep going like this. So I am trying to now, I want to do an apprenticeship. Part of it has to do with maths and budgeting. I'm trying to learn how to budget the work that I do.
You'll do it.
But it's you know, it's really interesting. And I do have to say, even AI doesn't help, because if you put something in AI, you know, one of the different applications, and it comes out with what you need, you still look at it and go, what on earth is it talking about? So it doesn't actually help you that much.
No,
you're
I can believe
I'll
you.
put this in an email, somebody will think it's fine, but you have no idea.
What about because one thing that pops up on Full Disclosure a lot with very successful people who were told at a very early age that they were thick because they had dyslexia. I think Brian Connolly being one of the most powerful examples in a really lovely interview. Do you think it changed your perception of your own intelligence for you to be told at 14 that you just couldn't do this stuff? You could still be really clever, but somehow you'd been, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I remember a boy at my school saying that I was nice but dim.
Wow.
And I remember it being heartbreaking, especially when you're 14 and you fancy boys and you know, that happens. It's dreadful. And I kind of have lived with that throughout my life, but I am not going to let that be the case going forward, because I've said to myself, what switched?
When did that little switch get flicked?
Having children definitely helps. I mean, I was lucky. I did a master's. I love art and love history, and I begged the university to let me in, and you kind of could do that a little bit back then. It wasn't so bad. You could kind of, you know, just get by. I got into a university. I worked really hard. The passion helped.
So it's there. The basic intelligence. The basic intelligence is there, but just not the background maths qualification.
No.
Well, you sort that out. You'll get that sorted out in no time.
I hope so, but it's a shame, and I always just feel really sad that people feel like this.
And they still do. And oddly, I mean, I mentioned discovering or stumbling across the existence of dyscalculia on the programme, live on the programme some years ago, and it hasn't shifted in the way that dyslexia did. It hasn't become a large part or a regular part. At least I don't think it has become a big part of the conversation. But what you describe sounds to me very symptomatic of that. It's not about being lazy or being unintelligent or being bad at something. It's about a kind of completely different skill set that you need to approach mathematics from a different angle, and the teaching system doesn't really help at the moment. 12:43 is the time. Should we have a little listen to the Alexei Sayle clip? Hopefully we'll have time for Simon in Sunningdale. Depends really on how long it takes us to get to the bottom of why antiquarian books, rare books, second-hand books are being destroyed in this country and beyond on an industrial scale. But in the meantime, here is this week's little taster of Full Disclosure, where I sat down with Alexei Sayle, one of the seminal comedians of the alternative comedy outbreak of the 1980s and beyond, and of course much more than that. He's also the bloke I probably quote more regularly than anyone else on the subject of austerity, because it was him who said that the way to what you've got to understand about austerity is that the international banking crisis of 2008 was caused, as George Osborne's austerity programme reflected, by there being too many libraries in Wolverhampton. So it was, as you would expect, both a pleasure and a privilege to sit down with the man himself. I mean, for people who don't know, what was your act then?
So I was the MC, so I'd come on between acts, but I would do material between the acts. And the essence of it was a kind of this. I mean, I thought of it as a Scouse bloke who's gone to prison for some violent crime, read a load of books in prison, and then they've let him out and they've given him his suit back. So like from the mod, and that's kind of, and so that because one of the things. I mean, punk music wasn't that important to me, but one of the things that I think punk also changed was not just music, but was the relationship between the performer and the audience. And so the audiences were much less passive. And so you needed to frighten the shit out of them, otherwise things would get out of hand, and it was my proud boast that at the Comedy Store, the police were never called while I was MC. And I just very naturally, I just developed this just terrifyingly angry, just kind of character, really violent,
Anger is an energy to continue with the punk vibe,
yeah.
But you weren't angry off stage.
No, I wasn't, and that kind of confused me for many years. Yeah, it was kind of it was weird, really.
You were quite happy, really, off stage.
Yeah,
happily married. You've got one of the most enduring marriages.
Yeah.
In the business, and successful now, and enjoying life, and yet on stage, furious.
Yeah, this persona.
And most people thought that was you.
Yeah. Well, I'd say I used to do Richard and Judy, but Judy never. She wouldn't come in when I was on because she's frightened of me. Yeah, and that was a funny thing to live with, really, because I wasn't him, but he was my living, really.
This is nice from Christine. I loved full disclosure this week, James. You know how my brain works. I automatically start thinking, what was wrong with last week's? I've got to get over this. Alexi is so thoughtful, and I really enjoyed your sensitive and informed questions. That's from Christine in Edinburgh. Christine, thank you.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It sounds like the beginning of a movie or perhaps a television series starring David Mitchell. Second-hand booksellers, independent booksellers across the world have been observing a strange pattern of purchases wherein scores of novels and other tomes are being bought in bulk. So there's a chap up in Northumberland called Stuart Manley at Barter Books, and he'd look to sell about 2,000 or 3,000 books in a typical week. So he's doing a lot of volume, and there'll be a lot of online. That's not bad, is it? 2,000 or 3,000 books in a typical week. But he recently accepted a single bulk order from a Canadian company that equaled what he would expect to move in usually it would take up to 7 days to do, with lots and lots of different customers. This is one customer in one transaction delivering a week's worth of business. And he is not alone. There is, or perhaps I should say there was, confusion about what the final destination for these books is, because he's not alone. Other booksellers from around the world have been reporting similarly unusual transactions or mega orders, if you prefer. And this is the mystery to which the journalist Emmanuel Mayberg from 404 Media decided to turn his attention. And I'm very, very happy that Emmanuel joins us now. Not least Emmanuel, because my wife saw this story and made me promise that I would help get to the bottom of it. You have done. So what first made your antennae twitch, and what did you find when you started exploring and investigating?
Yeah, so we know that AI companies are looking to purchase printed books and scan them and destroy them in the process because of a lawsuit from book authors against Anthropic, which is one of the major AI companies. They were suing them about a different copyright issue, but during the discovery process, it was revealed that they were working on something called Project Panama, which was their mission to scan 1 million physical books and use those books as training data for future AI models. So if it's one AI company that is doing this, it's safe to assume that other AI companies would do it because they're all so competitive. And around the same time, I started to hear from booksellers that exactly what you described, sudden historic spikes in sales. And I was talking to one of these booksellers who's been in the business for many, many years, and they had reason to believe that they were suddenly fulfilling those orders for AI companies, but they couldn't confirm that's the case because the AI companies, the final destination for the book, is kept anonymous by the markets that facilitate the sales.
I mean, you kind of expect a Dr. Evil type figure to be at the back of this, or a cartoon character who's destroying all the books. So why destroy them before we find out the next stage of your investigation? What's the benefit of destroying them? Buying them and scanning them is easy to understand, but destroying them adds a different dimension.
Yeah, it's an issue of speed and cost and convenience. When you get a bound book, the easiest way to digitize it is to cut off the spine of the book, which makes all the pages of the book loose. And then you can feed them rapidly, one by one, to a scanner. That's not the only way to do it. There are archivists, historians, other people who keep records and like to create digital copies of those records who don't want to destroy the original text. And there are machines and methods of doing so. You open the book, you scan the page, you gently flip to the next page, scan that one, and so on. But that takes more time, and because of that, it takes more money. It's just faster and more efficient to cut off the spine and scan all the pages, which, as you can imagine, if you're doing it to thousands and thousands of books, that's how you would want to do it. There's also, again, because of this lawsuit against Anthropic, there is a legal benefit to destroying the books, and that's because, at least in the United States, where this lawsuit was filed, the judge found that by taking a printed book, scanning it, and then destroying the original, that doesn't violate copyright. That is a fair use, as it's called. And that's because Anthropic, in this case, simply took something they own and created in a digital form and destroyed the original, which means they didn't duplicate it, which would allow them to keep a copy and sell a copy, and in that way cut into, theoretically, the publisher's profits.
Yeah, this is a conversation we should also have, because that is obviously the thing that has got many authors and publishers deeply exercised about what ownership of a book actually involves and entails in a digital universe. But back to this story. The challenge you are set with then is finding out where these books are going.
Yeah, so it seemed the bookseller had a suspicion that it was going to an AI company. We didn't know which, and it just seemed like a solvable problem, because we would be able to. The book is moving through the world. The shipment of books is moving through the world. All we have to do is track it and see where it ends up, and that's what we did. We put a tracking device in one of the books. It was part of an order of almost 1,000 books, and it left from a airport in California, arrived in the Midwest of the United States, and then started making its way back west, where it finally ended up in an Amazon warehouse in Las Vegas.
Holy moly. Where they were ripping it to shreds, scanning it in, and chucking it away.
Correct, yeah. So
you're basically Jack Reacher, but with books instead of bullets.
I wouldn't say that, no.
That's what you've tracked down. This is extraordinary. There's nothing that can be done about it. There's no laws being broken. But the idea is that they are cannibalizing years, if not centuries, of human endeavor in order to make their technological platforms, to make their AI programs ever more powerful, that eventually they will know. I think someone told me once, Emmanuel, that the last man alive to have read everything that had ever been written was St. Augustine of Hippo. But that's what these AI tycoons dream of creating, something that has read everything that has ever been written, and therefore the rest of us can come to them with our questions, and the answers will be a consequence of all of this accrual of knowledge and work.
Yeah, I mean, there's people understandably have a very negative reaction to this endeavor. I think you can look into our past, and any instance in which any entity is destroying massive amounts of books, they're usually the bad guys. Nobody likes that, right? And you can look into our future, right? It's like in science fiction, we imagine dystopias where the government or an evil corporation is destroying books. It's generally considered a bad practice, and I think that's completely understandable. And I think that's where like the visceral reaction to the story is coming from. There is some nuance to this. So,
yes, I agree.
I think people hear about the destruction of books, rare books especially, and they're imagining like, oh my God, they're destroying first editions of Oliver Twist or something like that. That is not what is happening. And what is more likely to end up in these large shipments are books that are rare by virtue of no one really caring that much about them. So it's books that were never printed in large quantities because they're about a niche subject. Maybe they were printed in a language that not many people speak. Maybe it's about, an instruction manual to a product that's like no longer in production, and things like that. If you're thinking about like the truly cherished texts of society, those things are probably already in the training data that these AI companies have, because those texts have been reproduced in digital forms. There's ebooks, they've been pirated and shared online. They already have that stuff. The thing that they're looking for is stuff that is not already somewhere on the internet, and those are lesser known, less cherished works. I would argue that the issue there is that they are destroying them. They are putting them behind a wall that they own so nobody else can access them. And we don't know exactly what is being destroyed, so it's kind of happening. We don't know what we lose until it's maybe too late.
Beautifully put. I mean, seriously beautifully put, because the nuance is important. The headline is terrifying and borderline dystopian, but the reality, as you say, is a little bit more complicated. There is, however, something visceral about the idea of a physical book being destroyed, especially if it's one that I wrote. Emmanuel, thank you so much. And a big shout to 404 Media, which is a brilliant platform. A journalistic platform. Emmanuel Myberg there, the co-founder of 404 Media. Sheila Fogarty is here.
I want to say something.
Sorry.
That story is amazing, isn't it? It's desperately worrying. I, maybe being fanciful, but I have a history of books finding me rather than the other way around. I mean, obviously not in every case, but so the idea, as your guest was saying, Emmanuel, that there could be books out there that may not be written about at the moment, may not be super popular, but they could land in your life just at a moment when you need them. I've had examples of that a number of times in my life where a book has found me, not the other way around.
And if the book's no longer in physical existence, that ain't going to happen.
Exactly.
Is it? Oof, I got a shiver then.
If
you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app. Of course, podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, and full disclosure this week with Sheila Fogarty's. What's the word for someone from the same city? Is there a word for it?
Compadre,
Alexi Sale. You can download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.